When Sarah Miller leaves for a routine trip to the grocery store and never returns, her wheelchair-bound husband, Michael, refuses to believe she abandoned their family, despite what detectives and even friends eventually suggest. For 14 years, he raises their 3 children alone from his wheelchair, keeping her memory alive while the world moves on and the mystery of her disappearance grows cold. Then a shocking international news story reveals a mysterious substance with unique properties appearing across the globe, igniting recognition in Michael that will propel him and his now-grown children on a dangerous journey across continents to uncover a truth more incredible than they ever imagined. In this heart-pounding race against powerful forces that will stop at nothing to protect their secrets, a family fractured by absence will discover that neither disability nor time can weaken a father's determination or a mother's love. Quick pause before we begin. Write in the comments where you're listening to our stories from, and feel free to subscribe to our channel. It's free and you can always change your mind. Enjoy the story. The rain hammered against the windows of the Miller family home in Boston on the ordinary Tuesday when Sarah Miller vanished from their lives. Michael Miller checked his watch for the 5th time that evening, 8:42 p.m. Sarah was never this late without calling. His fingers hovered over his phone, hesitating to make what would be his 7th unanswered call. The wheels of his chair squeaked against the hardwood floor as he moved to the window, peering through the curtain of water at their empty driveway. "Dad, when's Mom coming home?" 10-year-old Emma stood in the doorway, clutching her science project. "She promised to help me with my molecular model tonight." "Soon, sweetheart," Michael answered, the lie bitter on his tongue. Something was wrong. Sarah, brilliant biochemist with her clockwork precision and unwavering responsibility, wouldn't simply forget to come home. By midnight, with the children finally asleep upstairs, Michael made the call to the police. The officer's voice carried the professional detachment that would become the soundtrack to their nightmare. No signs of foul play at her lab, personal items and purse still at her desk. "Car still in the university parking lot? People sometimes just leave, sir, especially when facing challenging home situations." The unspoken implication hung in the air that a brilliant woman might walk away from a husband in a wheelchair and 3 children, that the pressure had simply become too much. But Michael knew better. The half-finished notes on her breakthrough neural regeneration formula, research she called Chrysalis for its vibrant blue compound, still laid open on her desk at home. The birthday gifts for Kevin's upcoming celebration hidden in her closet. The anniversary dinner reservation for next week. What nobody realized then was that Sarah Miller hadn't abandoned her family. She had become an unwilling asset in an operation that would span continents. Her genius imprisoned and exploited for a formula she'd created to heal, but would be twisted to destroy. As Michael stared at her empty side of the bed that night, he couldn't have known that it would take 14 years, 3 continents, and the unbreakable bonds of their fractured family to bring her home. 3 months earlier, "Michael, I think I've done it." Sarah burst into their bedroom, her blonde hair escaping from its ponytail, eyes alight with the fervor that always accompanied a breakthrough. Michael looked up from the stack of physics exams he was grading, smiling at his wife's enthusiasm. At 42, Sarah Miller still radiated the same passion for science that had captivated him when they were graduate students at MIT 20 years earlier. "The neural pathway regeneration? You've stabilized the compound?" Sarah nodded excitedly, perching on the edge of their bed. "The blue pigmentation was the key. It's not just a side effect, it's an indicator of molecular binding. When it turns that particular shade of cobalt, the compound achieves peak efficacy." Michael wheeled himself closer, taking her hands in his. Since the car accident 6 months ago that had left him paralyzed from the waist down, Sarah had thrown herself into her research with renewed urgency. The promise of neural regeneration wasn't just scientific ambition anymore. It was personal. "This could change everything," she whispered, suddenly serious. "Not just for you, but for millions. Spinal injuries, degenerative nerve diseases, even certain types of brain damage. Have you told anyone at the lab?" Sarah's expression shifted, caution replacing excitement. "No, not yet. There's something strange happening there. Funding inquiries that don't make sense. Visitors from pharmaceutical companies I've never heard of." She squeezed his hands. "I want to verify independently first. Make sure it's bulletproof before I submit anything officially." Michael knew his wife well enough to recognize her unease. "You think someone's trying to get ahead of your research? Or control it," she replied. "Do you know what a compound like this would be worth? billions potentially. And there are always people looking to exploit medical breakthroughs for profit rather than healing. Be careful, Sarah, he said, concern creasing his forehead. Some industries don't play by academic rules. She leaned forward to kiss him gently. Always am. Besides, I've got backup notes here at home. And the most critical components, she tapped her temple, are all up here. That had been their last conversation about Chrysalis. 2 weeks later, Michael's wheelchair caught on the edge of the carpet, sending him tumbling down the stairs of their Victorian home. The resulting hip fracture and additional complications had consumed their attention. Sarah had taken on everything: his care, the children, her research, the mounting medical bills, with determined efficiency. If she was worried about something at work, she never mentioned it again. Present day. It's been 48 hours and we're officially classifying Sarah Miller as a missing person, Detective Lowell informed Michael, seated across from him in their living room. The detective's notebook remained stubbornly empty. We've reviewed the security footage from the university. She left the building at 5:17 p.m., headed toward the parking lot, and then what? Then nothing. There's a blind spot in the camera coverage. She never appears on the next camera that would have captured her reaching her car. Detective Lowell shifted uncomfortably. Professor Miller, I have to ask, had your wife expressed any dissatisfaction with your marriage? Any signs of depression or unusual behavior? Michael's grip tightened on the armrests of his wheelchair. She didn't leave us. With all due respect, it happens more than you might think. The stress of caring for a spouse with disabilities, 3 children, financial pressures from medical bills, her career. Detective, Michael interrupted, his voice low but intense. My wife was working on a potentially revolutionary neural regeneration formula. If she disappeared, I'd look at who might benefit from her research before assuming she abandoned her family. This caught Lowell's attention. What kind of research exactly? She called it Chrysalis, a compound that could potentially repair damaged nerve cells. Something that valuable would attract attention from both legitimate and illegitimate interests. The detective made his first notes of the interview. I'll look into her colleagues at the university, see if anyone noticed unusual interest in her work. He paused. But Professor Miller, I should prepare you. Most missing persons cases like this, they don't go the way families hope. Jason Miller, at 16, the oldest of the 3 children, took his role as the man of the house seriously in the weeks following his mother's disappearance. He helped his sisters with homework, learned to cook simple meals, and adapted the house for his father's wheelchair accessibility. She didn't leave because of you, Jason told his father one night, finding him staring at old family photos long after the girls had gone to bed. Michael looked up, surprised. What makes you say that? Jason shrugged, his lanky teenage frame awkward in the doorway. I heard what the police said, about people leaving when things get hard. He stepped into the room resolute. Mom's not like that. She wouldn't leave us, especially not because of your accident. I know she wouldn't, Michael agreed quietly. Then why aren't we doing more to find her? There was an accusation in Jason's voice. The police have basically stopped looking. They think she just left. Michael sighed, setting the photo album aside. Jason, I've filed reports, hired a private investigator, contacted every hospital and friend and colleague. What more would you suggest? I don't know. The frustration of a 16-year-old boy erupted. Something. Anything. You're just sitting here while Mom is, his voice broke. Michael wheeled toward his son and reached for his hand. Listen to me. I have never for one moment believed your mother left us voluntarily, but I also have to keep this family together until we find her. I have to make sure you and your sisters feel safe and cared for. What if we never find her? Jason's question hung in the air, giving voice to their shared fear. We will, Michael promised, with more conviction than he felt. Somehow, we will. Neither of them could have imagined that somehow would take 14 years, or that it would begin with a news report about a mysterious new drug flooding the streets of Los Angeles, New York, and Tokyo. A drug with a distinctive cobalt blue color that a college chemistry professor would recognize immediately as eerily similar to his missing wife's research. What they couldn't know was that their reunion would require every ounce of courage, intelligence, and determination their family possessed. Or that Sarah Miller, imprisoned halfway around the world, had never stopped working on a way to return to them, even as her captors forced her to create something meant to destroy rather than heal. For now, though, they could only wait, their family suspended in the limbo of the unknown. As autumn turned to winter and the empty chair at their dinner table became a monument to absence. In one bedroom, Emma folded her mother's sweater under her pillow each night before sleep. In another, Kevin, too young to fully understand, asked daily when mommy was coming home. And in the master bedroom, Michael researched nerve regeneration formulas late into the night, searching for clues in the science his wife had loved, unwilling to let her disappear completely from their lives. The first year passed, then another. The police file gathered dust. Friends stopped asking. But in the Miller household, Sarah remained present in her absence, a silent participant in birthday celebrations, school achievements, and family dinners, where her name was spoken with determination rather than grief. What no one suspected was that the key to finding her had been in Michael's possession all along, hidden in plain sight among the research notes she'd left behind. Notes that would eventually connect to headlines about a drug called Blue Chrysalis that was about to change everything. 14 years later, Professor Michael Miller rolled his wheelchair through the doors of Boston University's physics department, nodding to students who greeted him with the respectful deference afforded to tenured faculty. At 56, the silver at his temples and the lines around his eyes spoke of the years that had passed. But there remained an intensity in his gaze that his graduate students had learned to both admire and fear. "Professor Miller, your 2 p.m. appointment is waiting in your office," his assistant called as he passed. Michael nodded acknowledgement, mind already on the dissertation defense he'd just sat through. The wheelchair hummed softly as he navigated the familiar route to his office, hands calloused from 14 years of self-propulsion. The university had offered motorized options repeatedly, but Michael preferred the manual chair. The physical exertion provided clarity and kept his upper body strong. Inside his office, a young man in a rumpled suit stood examining the framed family photograph on Michael's desk. He turned as Michael entered, revealing a badge. "Agent Curtis, DEA," he introduced himself. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me, Professor Miller." Michael positioned his chair behind his desk. "Your message said it concerned a chemical analysis. Though I should warn you, physical chemistry isn't my specialty. My wife was the biochemist in the family." A flicker of something, recognition, crossed Agent Curtis's face at the mention of Sarah. He opened his briefcase and removed a sealed evidence bag containing a small vial of vibrant blue liquid. "Are you familiar with a substance called Blue Chrysalis, Professor?" Michael stared at the vial, his heart suddenly pounding. The color, that specific shade of cobalt blue, was unmistakable. He'd seen it before, in beakers on his wife's home workbench the night she told him about her breakthrough. "Where did you get this?" he asked, his voice barely steady. "It's a new synthetic drug that appeared on streets worldwide about 7 months ago. Extremely potent, highly addictive, and unlike anything our chemists have seen before." Curtis placed several photographs on the desk. These were taken in Los Angeles, New York, Tokyo, and Berlin. In each city, Blue Chrysalis appeared simultaneously, suggesting a coordinated global distribution network. Michael barely heard him, still transfixed by the vial. "What does it do?" "It targets the brain's neural pathways, specifically those associated with pleasure and reward systems. Users report heightened sensory perception, euphoria, and enhanced cognitive function without the immediate crash of traditional stimulants." Curtis leaned forward. "But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because when our lab analyzed its molecular structure, your name came up." That snapped Michael's attention back to the agent. "My name? How? Not directly," Curtis clarified. "But the compound shares striking similarities with a theoretical formula published in a paper you co-authored with your wife 16 years ago on neural regeneration pathways." He paused. "Your wife who disappeared 14 years ago and was never found." Michael felt the room tilt slightly. All these years, the police had insisted Sarah had simply left, overwhelmed by their circumstances. He'd never believed it, but evidence to the contrary had remained frustratingly elusive. "You think there's a connection?" he asked carefully. "I think it's a remarkable coincidence that a revolutionary pharmaceutical compound based on your wife's research has suddenly appeared on the global black market," Curtis replied. "And I find it interesting that the street name, Blue Chrysalis, echoes the project name in her research notes." Michael's mind raced. Could Sarah be alive somewhere, forced to produce this drug? Had she been targeted for her research all those years ago? "I need to see your wife's complete research notes," Curtis continued. "Everything you have on the Chrysalis project." "Why?" "You clearly already have samples of the drug." "Because we've hit a wall. This substance is unlike anything we've encountered. Its complexity suggests it was created by someone with extraordinary expertise, Someone like your wife. If we can understand how it was developed, we might be able to trace its production source. Curtis's eyes narrowed slightly. Unless you're not interested in finding out what happened to her? Don't! Michael's voice hardened. Don't presume to know what I want regarding my wife. My children have grown up without their mother. I've spent 14 years wondering if she was dead or alive. Curtis backed off slightly. I apologize, but you understand the urgency. This drug is spreading rapidly, and its long-term effects are catastrophic. We've already documented cases of severe neural damage after extended use. Michael's wheelchair squeaked as he rolled to the bookshelf behind his desk. He pulled out a weathered leather journal hidden behind his physics text. Sarah kept duplicate notes at home. She was worried about something at her lab. He handed the journal to Curtis. I've gone through this hundreds of times looking for clues. Found nothing. Curtis opened the journal carefully. Sometimes it takes a fresh perspective, and sometimes we don't know what we're looking for until we see it. He flipped through several pages of molecular diagrams and chemical formulas. Professor Miller, would you be willing to consult with our forensic chemistry team? Your familiarity with your wife's work could prove invaluable. If it might lead to Sarah? Yes, Curtis nodded, closing the journal. There's one more thing you should know. 3 biochemists specializing in neuropharmaceuticals have disappeared in the past 5 years. All were working on compounds that share certain properties with Blue Chrysalis. Michael's hands tightened on his armrests. You think whoever took Sarah is still operating. We think whoever took the others might be the same entity that took her. And if that's the case, she could still be alive, Michael finished, the possibility both wonderful and terrible. 14 years of captivity, forced to use her brilliant mind to create something destructive rather than healing. The thought was almost unbearable. I should warn you, Curtis said, reading his expression. If she's been producing this drug under duress for 14 years, she might not be the same person you remember. She's my wife, Michael replied simply. However I find her, whoever she's become, she belongs with her family. Jason Miller, now 30, adjusted his tie in the reflection of his office window, overlooking downtown Boston. As senior corporate counsel for Nexus Pharmaceuticals, he'd achieved remarkable success for his age, driven partly by ambition, but mostly by the need to understand the industry that had been central to his mother's life. His office phone buzzed. Your father is here to see you, Mr. Miller. Jason frowned, checking his calendar. No appointment. His father rarely made spontaneous visits, especially to his workplace. Send him in. The door opened, and Michael wheeled himself into the sleek, modern office. Jason noted immediately that something was different. There was an energy about his father he hadn't seen in years. Dad, everything okay? Michael glanced at the assistant still holding the door, waited until she departed, then withdrew a flash drive from his pocket. I need you to look at something. Discreetly. Jason raised an eyebrow but took the drive. What is this? DEA files on a new street drug, one that appears to be based on your mother's research. The world seemed to still. Jason had been 12 when his mother vanished. Old enough to remember her vividly, young enough that her absence had shaped his entire adolescence. Unlike his sisters, who had gradually moved on, Emma, now a physician in Chicago, Kevin finishing college in California, Jason had channeled his unresolved grief into studying pharmaceutical law, driven by a subconscious hope of finding answers. Are you sure? He managed. Michael explained the DEA visit, the blue compound, the similarities to Sarah's work. Jason listened with growing disbelief, then without a word inserted the flash drive into his computer. Together, they reviewed Agent Curtis's files, chemical analyses, distribution patterns, known production facilities raided, all empty, as if recently abandoned, and suspected cartel connections. One detail caught Jason's attention. The primary distribution hub seems to be Hong Kong, with secondary operations in Singapore, Taiwan, and Malaysia. Michael nodded. Curtis mentioned that. Likely production is somewhere in Asia. Jason continued scrolling through documents, his legal mind cataloging relevant details. They've identified a possible corporate front, Eastern Horizon Pharmaceuticals, supposedly researching treatments for degenerative neural diseases. He looked up. That can't be a coincidence. No, Michael agreed. But after 14 years, what triggered this now? Why would they suddenly mass produce and distribute a drug based on Sarah's research? They've had her formula for years. Maybe they didn't, Jason said slowly, an idea forming. Maybe they had Mom, but not her complete formula. Maybe she's been holding something back all this time. Michael considered this. Sarah's brilliance had always been matched by her determination. If she'd been taken for her research, would she have found ways to resist? To delay the completion of a formula she knew could be devastating if misused. If that's true, something changed recently, Michael said. Something that made them accelerate their plans. Before Jason could respond, his office phone buzzed again. Mr. Miller, your sister's calling. She says it's urgent. Jason frowned. Emma? Put her through. He activated the speakerphone. You're on with me and Dad. Emma's voice came through, tense and professional, the emergency room doctor evident in her clipped tones. I just treated a patient for an overdose of something called blue chrysalis. Dad, I recognize the molecular structure from Mom's research journals. I ran some independent tests and her voice caught. The core compound is identical to Mom's neural regeneration formula, but it's been modified, weaponized essentially. Michael and Jason exchanged startled looks. Emma, the DEA came to see your father today about the same drug, Jason explained. There's more, Emma continued. The patient had a business card in his wallet for Eastern Horizon Pharmaceuticals, with an address in Hong Kong. When I searched the company online, I found something strange. Their corporate logo, it's a stylized chrysalis. Blue. Jason was already typing, pulling up the company website. There it was, a sleek blue symbol reminiscent of a cocoon or chrysalis. Dad, Jason began, but Michael was already reaching for his phone. I'm calling Curtis. We need to move on this immediately. Move on what? Emma asked through the speaker. What's happening? Michael's voice took on a steely determination that his children hadn't heard since before Sarah's disappearance. We're going to find your mother. All of us. Together. What about Kevin? Jason asked. Call him, Michael instructed. Tell him to get on the first flight from California. If Sarah's alive, if she's being held somewhere in Asia, we're going to bring her home. Dad, Emma's voice was gentle now, the doctor accustomed to tempering hope with reality. It's been 14 years. We need to prepare ourselves for the possibility that she's not the same, that she might be broken. Complicit? Michael finished. I don't care. If there's even a chance she's alive, I'll cross oceans to bring her back. As he spoke, an image caught his eye on Jason's computer screen. A news article about Eastern Horizon's CEO, Harvey Zhao, attending a pharmaceutical conference. Beside him stood a severe-looking Western man identified as Ronald Maxwell, head of research. Michael froze, the name triggering a distant memory. 14 years ago, in the weeks before Sarah vanished, she'd mentioned a visit from a pharmaceutical executive, a man whose interest in her research had made her uneasy. His name was Ronald something, she'd said. He asked questions that went beyond professional curiosity. Michael stared at the man's face, memorizing it, feeling the first real lead in 14 years crystallize into certainty. Jason, book flights to Hong Kong. For all of us. The determination in his voice left no room for argument. After 14 years of helplessness, Michael Miller had found purpose again. Somewhere across the world, in a laboratory or corporate facility, Sarah Miller might be waiting. And this time, her family was coming for her. What they couldn't yet know was that they weren't the only ones who had made the connection between Blue Chrysalis and Sarah Miller, and that by pursuing her, they were placing themselves directly in the crosshairs of an organization that had successfully kept her captive for 14 years. An organization that had eliminated anyone who had ever gotten too close to their operation. The Cathay Pacific flight from Boston to Hong Kong stretched like an eternity across the Pacific. Michael Miller leaned his head against the window, watching clouds drift beneath him as his mind churned with possibilities and fears. Beside him, Jason dozed fitfully, his tall frame uncomfortable in the confines of economy-class seating. Across the aisle, Emma reviewed Sarah's research journals for the 100th time, her medical training allowing her to understand the biochemistry in ways the rest of them couldn't. Kevin, now 24, and the spitting image of Sarah with his blonde hair and intense blue eyes, sat beside her with noise-canceling headphones, eyes closed but clearly awake, his fingers tapping an anxious rhythm against his knee. They had argued about him coming. His final semester at Stanford would be disrupted, potentially delaying his computer science degree. But Kevin had been adamant. I barely remember her, he'd said simply. If there's a chance to get her back, nothing else matters. Michael watched his youngest now and felt a deep ache. Kevin had been only 4 when Sarah vanished. His memories of her were fragmented. The scent of her perfume, the sound of her laughter, bedtime stories about friendly molecules and brave atoms. The others had 14 years of memories to sustain them. Kevin had photographs and stories, and the hollow space where maternal love should have shaped his childhood. "You should try to sleep," Jason murmured, shifting in his seat. "It's going to be intense once we land." Michael nodded but knew sleep would elude him. Agent Curtis had arranged for local DEA contacts to meet them, providing support while maintaining official distance. The agency couldn't sanction a family-led investigation, but Curtis understood what drove them. "Sir?" A flight attendant paused beside his seat. "Can I get you anything?" "Just water, thank you," Michael replied. As she moved away, Emma closed the journal and leaned across the aisle toward him. "Dad, I've been thinking about something. Mom's original formula, it was designed to bridge damaged neural pathways, essentially creating new connections where injury had severed them." "That's right," Michael confirmed. Sarah had explained it to him once as building microscopic bridges across canyons in the brain, allowing signals to flow again. But this drug, blue chrysalis, it does something more insidious. It creates excessive pathways, flooding the brain with connections that shouldn't exist. That's why users experience that sensory enhancement and cognitive acceleration. Their brains are literally processing information through channels that bypass normal filters. She hesitated. "It's brilliant and terrifying. The same principle inverted." "Could Mom's original work have been adapted this way accidentally?" Kevin asked, sliding his headphones down. Emma shook her head. "No, this modification required intimate knowledge of the original formula, plus a deliberate restructuring. Someone with Mom's expertise would have understood exactly what they were creating. The implication hung heavily between them. Either Sarah had willingly transformed her healing compound into something destructive, or she had been forced to do so under extreme duress. "I refuse to believe she would do this voluntarily," Michael said firmly. "Sarah dedicated her life to healing people, not harming them." Jason stirred, fully awake. "The question is, why start mass producing and distributing now? If they've had Mom all this time, why wait 14 years? "Maybe they didn't have the complete formula until recently," Kevin suggested. "Maybe Mom has been resisting somehow." The thought was simultaneously painful and hopeful. Had Sarah been fighting back all these years, finding ways to delay or sabotage the full weaponization of her research? "Whatever the reason," Michael said, "this is our first real lead in 14 years. We follow it wherever it takes us." What remained unspoken was the question none of them dared voice aloud. After 14 years of captivity, would Sarah Miller still be recognizable as the woman they had lost? And if they found her, could they piece their fractured family back together? Halfway around the world in a sterile laboratory complex nestled in the mountains outside Hong Kong, Sarah Miller carefully measured a cobalt blue liquid into a series of test tubes. At 56, her once blonde hair had turned silver, cropped short for practicality. Deep lines bracketed her mouth and eyes, but her hands remained steady, her movements precise. "A doctor, Chen, progress report?" The voice from the doorway made her tense almost imperceptibly. Sarah, or Dr. Elizabeth Chen, as she had been known for 14 years, turned to face Ronald Maxwell, a smile fixed firmly in place. "Batch 37 is showing 98.7% purity. The stability issues from the previous formulation have been corrected." Maxwell nodded, his cold blue eyes assessing her work with the calculating gaze that had become all too familiar. At 62, he remained imposing, tall and lean, with silver hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to obedience. "Excellent." The Beijing buyers were impressed with the demonstration. "They've doubled their order." Sarah nodded, her face a careful mask. "I'll need additional raw materials. The current supply won't accommodate expanded production." "Already arranged. Harvey is handling the logistics." Maxwell stepped further into the laboratory, lowering his voice. "Elizabeth, after 14 years, I'd have thought we'd move beyond these little games." Sarah's pulse quickened, but her expression remained neutral. "I don't know what you mean." Maxwell picked up one of the test tubes, holding it to the light. "Our monitoring system detected an unauthorized access to your terminal last night. Something about molecular degradation patterns?" He set the tube down precisely. "You know how important security is to our operation?" "I was running projections on long-term stability," Sarah replied smoothly. "Standard protocol for quality control." Maxwell didn't sound convinced. "Just remember our arrangement, Elizabeth. Your cooperation ensures your family's safety." "That hasn't changed." The familiar threat made her stomach clench with the same fear she'd felt for 14 years. The photographs that arrived regularly, Michael in his wheelchair at university functions, Jason in front of his law office, Emma in her white coat outside Chicago Memorial Hospital, Kevin on Stanford's campus, served as constant reminders of what she stood to lose if she defied them. I understand perfectly, Ronald. I always have. Good. He moved toward the door, pausing briefly. Oh, and we're relocating you to the Singapore facility next week. Pack only essentials. Sarah's careful composure nearly slipped. Singapore? But I've just optimized this laboratory setup. Moving now will delay production. That's been considered and deemed acceptable. Maxwell's tone indicated the decision was final. Security protocols require periodic relocation. You know this. After he left, Sarah waited exactly 7 minutes, the time it took him to reach his office and become absorbed in other matters, before accessing her terminal. The relocation was unexpected and troubling. In 14 years, she'd been moved only twice, each time after she'd made minute but critical adjustments to the chrysalis formula, changes that would eventually lead to the compound destabilizing after prolonged use. Had they discovered her subtle sabotage? Or was this standard protocol, as Maxwell claimed? She quickly entered her credentials, accessing the secure server under the guise of reviewing molecular structures. What she actually sought was buried deep within innocuous-looking research files. The real chrysalis formula, the one that could heal rather than harm, along with evidence she'd meticulously gathered about Eastern Horizon's operations over 14 painstaking years. If they were moving her to Singapore, she might lose access to this terminal, might lose her one chance at exposing what they'd forced her to do. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, initiating a heavily encrypted transfer to a secure cloud server she'd created years ago, using computer skills learned from the IT technician she'd befriended during her first years of captivity. Whether Maxwell suspected or not, she couldn't risk losing everything now. Not when she'd sacrificed 14 years of her life, 14 years away from her family, maintaining the delicate balancing act of complying just enough to keep them safe, while working tirelessly toward eventual escape and exposure of Eastern Horizon's operation. A notification popped up on her screen, an automated alert from one of the monitoring programs she discreetly installed. Someone had searched for information on Eastern Horizon Pharmaceuticals from Boston. From Boston University's network, Sarah froze, her heart hammering against her ribs. Michael? After all these years, had he somehow made the connection? She quickly cleared the notification, mind racing with both hope and terror. If Michael was investigating Eastern Horizon, he was placing himself directly in Maxwell's crosshairs. And Maxwell had demonstrated repeatedly that he would eliminate any threat to his operation without hesitation. Sarah resumed the data transfer with renewed urgency. She had to finish her contingency plan now. Because if Michael truly was looking for her after all these years, everything was about to change. Hong Kong International Airport hummed with activity as the Miller family navigated customs and immigration. The humidity hit them immediately as they emerged into the arrival hall, a stark contrast to Boston's autumn crispness they'd left behind. Agent Curtis's contact, a compact, efficient woman who introduced herself only as Agent Zhao, met them at the designated rendezvous point. "Welcome to Hong Kong," she said briskly. "We've secured accommodations for you away from the tourist areas. Less visibility." She handed Jason a folder. "These are the operational parameters we discussed. The DEA is providing background support only. Officially, you're here visiting universities for potential research collaboration." Her gaze lingered on Michael's wheelchair. "We've ensured accessibility at the hotel and transportation." "What have you learned about Eastern Horizon?" Michael asked as they moved toward the exit. "Established 12 years ago, specializing in neuropharmaceutical research. Clean public record, impeccable corporate structure." Agent Zhao guided them to a waiting van. "But their security rivals' military installations and their research facilities are remarkably isolated." "Have you identified any of their locations?" Jason asked. "Their corporate headquarters is in Central, but we suspect the actual production facility is outside the city. Satellite imaging has identified a compound in the new territories that matches certain parameters." As they loaded into the van, Agent Zhao continued her briefing. "Eastern Horizon is hosting a pharmaceutical conference tomorrow at the Grand Harbor Hotel. Ronald Maxwell and Harvey Zhao will both be in attendance, along with potential investors and research partners." "We need to be there," Michael stated firmly. "Already arranged. Dr. Emma Miller has been added to the attendance list as a neurology researcher from Chicago Memorial interested in potential collaborations. Jason will accompany her as legal counsel." "What about Dad and me?" Kevin asked. Agent Zhao hesitated. The wheelchair makes Professor Miller too recognizable if Sarah has shared photos of her family with anyone there, willingly or otherwise. And you, Mr. Miller, bear a striking resemblance to your mother. Your presence might trigger recognition. Kevin started to protest, but Michael placed a hand on his arm. She's right. If Sarah is being coerced through threats against us, the last thing we want is to confirm that her family is in Hong Kong. Emma and Jason can gather intelligence without raising alarms. As they drove through Hong Kong's dense urban landscape, the reality of their situation began to sink in. They were in a foreign country pursuing a dangerous criminal organization on the thinnest of leads, hoping against hope that Sarah was still alive after 14 years of captivity. "What's our actual plan here?" Kevin asked, breaking the tense silence in the van. "We can't just walk into Eastern Horizon and ask for Mom." "Reconnaissance first," Agent Zhao replied. "The conference gives us an opportunity to gather intelligence, identify key personnel, and potentially access secure areas while security is focused on the event." "And if we locate her?" Michael pressed. Agent Zhao's expression remained carefully neutral. "That depends on the circumstances. If Dr. Miller is under duress but physically accessible, extraction might be possible. If she's held in a secure facility, we'll need to involve local authorities and higher-level DEA resources." Emma leaned forward. "You keep saying if. Do you have doubts that our mother's alive?" "I've worked trafficking and kidnapping cases for 15 years, Dr. Miller. When victims don't resurface within the first year, the outcome is rarely positive." "But the drug," Jason countered. "Blue chrysalis? Someone with Mom's expertise had to develop it." "Yes, and that's why we're pursuing this lead. But after 14 years, you should be prepared for all possibilities." The van turned onto a less congested street, heading toward the outskirts of the city. Through the window, Michael watched Hong Kong's spectacular skyline give way to more modest developments and then lush mountainous terrain. Somewhere in this sprawling metropolis or its surrounding areas, Sarah might be living, breathing, working. The thought was simultaneously exhilarating and terrifying. "Agent Zhao," he said quietly, "I appreciate your professional caution, but I've spent 14 years believing my wife is alive. I'm not stopping now." The agent met his gaze in the rearview mirror, something softening briefly in her expression. "Then let's find her, Professor Miller." Their hotel was modest but secure, located in a residential neighborhood away from tourist areas. Once settled, they gathered in Michael's room to develop their strategy. "The conference starts at 9 a.m. tomorrow," Jason said, reviewing the materials Agent Zhao had provided. "Emma and I will attend as planned. Eastern Horizon is unveiling a new breakthrough neural pathway treatment, undoubtedly a legitimate version of whatever Blue Chrysalis does. We need to access their research database," Kevin said, opening his laptop. "If Mom is working for them, there should be digital fingerprints, her coding style, documentation patterns. Mom always nested her comments in a specific way." "Can you hack into their system?" Emma asked. Kevin's fingers paused over the keyboard. "Possibly, but corporate pharmaceutical security is tight, and if they're running an illegal operation on the side, it'll be even more fortified." Michael rolled his wheelchair to the window, looking out at the unfamiliar city. "We need to be careful. If Eastern Horizon realizes we're searching for Sarah, they might move her or worse." The unspoken worse hung heavily in the room. For 14 years, they had lived with uncertainty. Now, actively pursuing the truth, they faced the possibility that their search might place Sarah in greater danger. Jason joined his father at the window. "We'll be careful, but we need to act decisively. If they're relocating to Singapore next week as our intelligence suggests, this might be our only opportunity." "I can place tracking devices on Maxwell and Zhao during the conference," Emma suggested. "DEA issued virtually undetectable. And I'll focus on network penetration," Kevin added. "If I can access their internal communications, we might find direct evidence of Mom's location." Michael turned from the window, surveying his children with a mixture of pride and concern. They had grown into remarkable adults during Sarah's absence. Resourceful, determined, cohesive despite the fracture at the center of their family. Whatever happened in the coming days, he was grateful they faced it together. "Remember," he said, "our priority is finding your mother. Not confrontation, not revenge. We locate her, determine her situation, and then bring in official support as needed." They nodded their agreement, though Michael noticed the hard set of Jason's jaw, the slight narrowing of Emma's eyes. Their professional veneers, Jason the corporate lawyer, Emma the composed physician, couldn't completely mask the emotional undercurrents of this mission. 14 years of wondering, of unanswered questions, of missed birthdays and achievements in family gatherings had left its mark on each of them. "Get some rest," Michael advised. "Tomorrow we start bringing her home." Sarah Miller couldn't sleep. The relocation order had triggered a hypervigilance she couldn't shake. 14 years of captivity had taught her to read the subtle shifts in Eastern Horizon's operations, and something felt different this time. Her room, comfortable but unmistakably a gilded cage, overlooked the compound's central courtyard. At nearly 2 a.m., the facility should have been quiet, yet she observed increased security patrols, additional guards positioned at key access points. She moved away from the window and returned to her desk, where a single photograph sat in a silver frame, the only personal item she'd been allowed to keep when they took her. It showed her family at Jason's high school graduation, all of them smiling, unaware that within months their lives would be shattered. Sarah touched Michael's face in the photograph, wondering how the years had changed him. The surveillance photos Maxwell provided periodically showed him from a distance. At university functions, grocery shopping, occasional outings with the children. But they revealed nothing of his spirit, of how he'd coped with both her disappearance and his disability. A soft knock at her door startled her. At this hour, it could only be one person. "Come in, Lin," she called quietly. The door opened to reveal a petite Chinese woman in her 40s. Dr. Lin Mei Hua, the only person in 14 years whom Sarah might cautiously consider a friend. Like Sarah, Lin was kept at Eastern Horizon through coercion, her family in mainland China under constant surveillance. "They're accelerating the Singapore transfer," Lin whispered without preamble. "Day after tomorrow, not next week." Sarah felt her blood run cold. "Why?" "Security concerns. I overheard Maxwell talking with Zhao." Lin glanced nervously at the door. "Sarah, they mentioned Boston. And a professor." The room seemed to tilt momentarily. "Michael, it had to be. Did they say anything else? Names? Specific concerns?" Lin shook her head. "Just that preventative measures were being implemented." "Sarah, if they suspect your family's investigating..." "I know." The implication was clear. Maxwell's definition of preventative measures typically involved elimination of threats. If Michael was in danger, Sarah needed to act immediately, not in 2 days. She made a swift decision. "Lin, I need your help. Tonight." Lin's eyes widened with alarm. "You can't be thinking of..." "I have evidence," Sarah interrupted, keeping her voice low. 14 years of documentation on everything Eastern Horizon has done. The kidnappings, the forced research, the distribution networks for Blue Chrysalis. Everything needed to dismantle their entire operation. She gripped Lin's hands. "But I need to get it out of the system and to the authorities before they move me. The monitoring software, I can bypass it temporarily. I've been preparing for years. But I need a distraction in the main security hub." Sarah held Lin's gaze. "Help me, and we both get our families back." Lin wavered visibly, fear battling with desperate hope. "What do you need me to do?" Sarah quickly outlined her plan. Years of careful observation had revealed patterns in the security protocols, vulnerabilities in the monitoring systems. With Lin creating a diversion, a controlled chemical reaction in her laboratory that would trigger alarms without causing actual harm, Sarah would have approximately 7 minutes to access the secure server and complete the data transfer she'd begun earlier. "Once the information is uploaded to my secure server, it will automatically forward to several international law enforcement agencies," Sarah explained. "Even if they catch us, the evidence will be beyond their control." Lin looked terrified but resolute. "If we're caught, they'll kill us, or worse, retaliate against our families. If we do nothing, I'll be moved to Singapore. Michael might be walking into a trap, and we'll remain prisoners for however long Eastern Horizon finds us useful." Sarah squeezed Lin's hands. "I've been compliant for 14 years to protect my family. But if they're in danger anyway, compliance no longer serves its purpose." After a long moment, Lin nodded. 3 hours. "When the guard rotation changes, I'll set off the alarms." After Lin departed, Sarah sat motionless, the weight of what she planned pressing down on her. 14 years of calculated submission, of minute acts of rebellion disguised as technical adjustments, of gathering evidence while appearing to comply, all culminating in this moment. She thought of Michael and the children, how Jason would be 30 now, Emma 28, Kevin 24, adults with lives she knew nothing about beyond the sanitized glimpses Maxwell provided. Would they forgive her absence? Would they understand the choice she had made to protect them by staying away? Those questions would have to wait. First, she needed to ensure their safety, expose Eastern Horizon, and, if fortune finally favored her, find her way back to them. If Michael truly was in Hong Kong, perhaps their separation was nearing its end. Sarah opened the false bottom of her desk drawer, removing the small device she'd painstakingly assembled from components smuggled from the electronics lab. When connected to her terminal, it would execute the bypass protocol she'd developed, creating a 7-minute window during which her activities would be masked from the monitoring system. Everything hinged on timing, on lens diversion, on the predictability of the security team's response protocols. If anything deviated from the expected pattern, they would both be caught. But after 14 years of captivity, of using her brilliant mind to create a substance that harmed rather than healed, the prospect of failure seemed less terrifying than the certainty of continued imprisonment. Sarah checked the time, 2:17 a.m., less than 3 hours until their plan would be set in motion. She closed her eyes briefly, allowing herself to imagine, for the first time in 14 years, the possibility of freedom, of seeing Michael and their children again, of reclaiming her identity, her life, her family. Then methodically, she began her preparations. Because beyond the hope of reunion lay a more immediate imperative. If Michael was indeed in Hong Kong investigating Eastern Horizon, his life was in imminent danger. And Sarah Miller had already lost 14 years with her family. She would not lose them permanently to Ronald Maxwell's preventative measures. As the hours ticked down toward the guard rotation, Sarah felt a strange calm descend. After 14 years of waiting, of calculating, of enduring, the moment of action had finally arrived. What she couldn't know was that across the city, her family was setting in motion their own plan to find her, and that their paths were about to converge in ways none of them could anticipate. Morning broke over Hong Kong with a hazy brilliance, the city's iconic skyline emerging from dawn mist as the Miller family prepared for their respective missions. In Emma and Jason's hotel room, Agent Zhao provided final equipment checks, miniature tracking devices, concealed communication systems, tiny cameras disguised as accessories. Remember observation only, she emphasized, particularly to Jason, whose controlled intensity concerned her. If you identify Sarah Miller or uncover concrete evidence of her location, report back immediately. Do not attempt independent action. In Michael and Kevin's room, a different kind of preparation was underway. While unable to attend the conference without risking recognition, they would establish a remote operations center from their hotel suite. I've gained peripheral access to the hotel's security network, Kevin explained, his laptop displaying multiple camera feeds from the Grand Harbor Hotel where the conference would take place. Not Eastern Horizon's internal systems yet, but I can monitor public areas, track Emma and Jason's movements. Michael nodded approval, watching his youngest son work with practiced efficiency. Kevin had channeled his grief over a mother he barely remembered into technological expertise that now might help bring her home. What about the suspected research facility? Michael asked. Kevin switched screens to display satellite imagery. The DEA provided coordinates for the compound in the new territories. Heavy security, isolated location, significant power consumption consistent with a research facility. He zoomed in on a complex nestled against a mountainside. If Mom is anywhere in Hong Kong, this is the most likely location. Michael studied the images, trying to imagine Sarah within those walls. 14 years. Nearly a third of their married life spent apart. A significant portion of their children's lives marked by her absence. Dad? Kevin's voice pulled him from his thoughts. Are you okay? Michael placed a hand on his son's shoulder. I'm fine. Just processing what happens if we actually find her. Kevin's expression softened. You mean if she's different? If captivity has changed her? That's part of it, Michael admitted. 14 years is a long time. We've all changed. You children have grown up. I've adjusted to life without her. He paused. But mainly I'm wondering what she's endured, what she's been forced to do, and whether she'll forgive herself for it even if we forgive her. Mom didn't choose to leave us, Kevin said firmly. Whatever she's done to survive, to protect herself, or maybe even us, that's not on her. Michael squeezed his son's shoulder, struck by the wisdom in one so young, especially one who had lost his mother at such a formative age. When did you get so insightful? Kevin managed a small smile. Had good parents. One in person, one in spirit. A knock at the door signaled it was time. Emma and Jason entered, transformed for their undercover roles. Emma elegant and professional in a tailored suit. Jason impeccable as the corporate attorney he actually was. "Comms check," Jason said, adjusting his tie where a miniature microphone was concealed. "Reading you clearly," Kevin confirmed, monitoring the audio feed on his laptop. Emma approached her father, bending to embrace him. "We'll be careful," she promised. "And if she's there, if there's any sign of Mom, we'll find it." Michael held his daughter tightly for a moment. "Just remember, the priority is information gathering. We need to know where she is and what situation she's in before we can help her." "We know, Dad," Jason assured him, his earlier intensity now channeled into focused determination. "Reconnaissance only. No direct contact, no confrontation." As they prepared to depart, Michael couldn't shake a growing sense of urgency. After 14 years of dead ends and false hopes, they were closer than ever to finding Sarah, yet also entering the most dangerous phase of their search. "Stay in constant communication," he instructed. "Kevin and I will monitor everything from here and coordinate with Agent Zhao's team as needed. If anything seems off, anything at all, abort immediately," Kevin added. "We've waited 14 years. We can wait a little longer if it means doing this safely." Emma nodded, checking her watch. A DEA-issued device with multiple surveillance capabilities. "The conference opens in 40 minutes. We should go." As they left, Michael rolled his wheelchair to the window, looking out at the Hong Kong skyline shimmering in the morning light. Somewhere out there, Sarah might be waking to another day of captivity, unaware that her family had crossed oceans to find her. "We're coming, Sarah," he whispered to the glass. "Hold on just a little longer." What Michael couldn't know was that at that very moment, Sarah Miller was executing her own desperate plan for freedom, and that before the day ended, the collision course set in motion 14 years ago would finally reach its inevitable conclusion. The Grand Harbor Hotel's conference center buzzed with the controlled energy of pharmaceutical professionals networking over coffee and promotional materials. Emma Miller moved through the crowd with practiced ease, her DEA-provided credentials identifying her as Dr. Emma Bennett from Chicago Memorial's Neurology Department. "Eastern Horizon representatives are stationed near the main exhibition area," Jason murmured, walking slightly behind her in his role as her legal counsel. "Maxwell hasn't arrived yet, but Zhao is by the central display." Emma nodded almost imperceptibly, her gaze sweeping the room until she located Harvey Zhao, a slim, elegant man in his 50s, surrounded by attentive potential investors. The corporate logo behind him caught her attention. A stylized blue chrysalis, almost identical to the symbol in their mother's research journals. "I'm moving in to make contact," she said softly, knowing Kevin and Michael would be monitoring their communications from the hotel room. "Jason, circle around, see if you can access the restricted presentation area." As Emma approached, Harvey Zhao looked up with the practiced smile of a corporate executive. "Good morning. Welcome to Eastern Horizon's presentation. Dr. Emma Bennett, Chicago Memorial," she introduced herself, extending her hand. "Your work on neural pathway enhancement has captured significant attention in our department." "We're pleased to hear it," Zhao replied smoothly. "Our official presentation begins at 11, but perhaps you'd like a preview of our newest developments?" Emma maintained her professional demeanor despite her racing heart. "I'd be very interested, particularly in your research team's approach. The preliminary papers suggest remarkably innovative methodology. Our head researcher is exceptionally talented," Zhao confirmed. Dr. Chen has pioneered approaches that have revolutionized our understanding of neuroplasticity." "Dr. Chen." Emma filed away the name, wondering if it was her mother's forced pseudonym or someone else entirely. "Will Dr. Chen be presenting today?" she inquired casually. Something flickered briefly in Zhao's expression. "Unfortunately not. She's preparing for our Singapore expansion and couldn't attend." Before Emma could pursue this further, a stir at the main entrance drew attention. Ronald Maxwell had arrived, flanked by security personnel who scanned the room with professional vigilance. "Ah, our research director has arrived," Zhao noted. "If you'll excuse me, Dr. Bennett, please enjoy the preliminary materials, and we'll speak more after the presentation." As Zhao moved to greet Maxwell, Emma retreated slightly, touching her watch to activate its camera function. "Did you get that, Kevin? They have a head researcher called Dr. Chen who's apparently being relocated to Singapore." "Got it," Kevin's voice came through her concealed earpiece. "Running the name through available databases now." Across the room, Jason had successfully maneuvered into the restricted preparation area behind the main stage, using his authentic credentials as corporate counsel to deflect cursory challenges from staff. "I'm backstage," he reported quietly. "Multiple computer terminals set up for the presentation. If I can access one, Kevin might be able to penetrate deeper into their network." "Be careful," Michael's voice joined the conversation. "Security is tight around Maxwell, at least 4 personnel with concealed weapons." Emma resumed her casual circuit of the exhibition space, collecting promotional materials while discreetly observing Maxwell and Zhao. The two men conversed in low tones, Maxwell's expression tense despite his public smile. "Something's off," she murmured. "Maxwell seems agitated. They keep checking their phones." Kevin's voice crackled through the earpiece. "I've got something on Dr. Elizabeth Chen. Limited public profile, but she appeared in Eastern Horizon's research publications starting 13 years ago. Specialization in neuropharmaceuticals." 13 years, Michael repeated. That timeline fits. 1 year after Sarah's disappearance. Time enough to establish a new identity for her. "There's more," Kevin continued, excitement evident in his voice. "I managed to access a partial employee database through a security vulnerability. Dr. Chen's employee ID photo is obscured in the system, but her credentials list previous research at MIT. Dad, it has to be Mom." Emma felt a surge of adrenaline. "Can you determine her location?" "Working on it. The facility in the new territory seems most likely based on security protocols, but I need access to their internal network to confirm." "I might be able to help with that," Jason interjected. "I've located an unattended terminal. If I can connect Kevin's bypass device..." "Do it," Michael instructed. "But maintain cover. If this Dr. Chen is Sarah, we need to locate her precisely before making any move." As Jason carefully attached the small device Kevin had provided to the terminal's USB port, Emma continued her surveillance of Maxwell and Zhao. Their agitation seemed to be growing, with Maxwell now engaged in what appeared to be a tense phone conversation. "Something's definitely wrong," Emma reported. "Maxwell looks like he's about to explode." Through her earpiece, she heard a soft exclamation from Kevin. "I'm in." The bypass worked. "I'm accessing their secure servers now. Searching for personnel locations." "Got it." "Dr. Elizabeth Chen is assigned to Laboratory Complex C at the New Territories facility. Current status." "Wait, this can't be right." "What is it?" Michael demanded. "According to the system, Dr. Chen triggered a security protocol 3 hours ago. Her current status is listed as containment pending." Emma felt her blood run cold. "What does that mean?" "I don't know exactly, but it can't be good. There are emergency directives being issued to security personnel at the research facility." Kevin's voice grew urgent. "Dad, I think Mom might have tried to escape or do something that compromised their operation. Whatever it is, she's in immediate danger." Michael's decision was instantaneous. "Emma, Jason, abort the conference mission now. Meet us at the rendezvous point. We need to get to that facility immediately." Emma began moving toward the exit, only to freeze as she noticed Maxwell staring directly at her from across the room, his expression shifting from irritation to suspicious scrutiny. "I think we've been made," she said quietly, changing direction to avoid appearing to flee. "Maxwell is watching me. Use the emergency exit near the exhibition hall." Agent Zhao's voice joined the conversation. "My team will create a diversion." As if on cue, a shrill alarm sounded, followed by an announcement regarding a security concern that required evacuation of the conference center. In the ensuing confusion, Emma slipped toward the designated exit. Jason's voice came urgently through the comms. "Emma, get out now! I just overheard security personnel. They've identified us as Miller family members. Somehow they know who we are." Emma quickened her pace, heart pounding as she navigated through confused conference attendees. Just as she reached the emergency exit, a firm hand grasped her arm. "Dr. Bennett," Maxwell said, his voice coldly polite despite the chaos around them. "Or should I say, Dr. Miller? Your mother has been expecting you." 3 hours earlier, Sarah Miller had been poised at her computer terminal, watching the time display with laser focus. In exactly 47 seconds, Lynn would trigger the chemical diversion in Laboratory B, creating the window Sarah needed to execute her data transfer and alert the authorities to her location and situation. 14 years of captivity, of forced research, of separation from her family, all potentially ending with this desperate gambit. The alarm blared right on schedule, red emergency lights flashing throughout the complex. Sarah immediately connected her bypass device and began the process, fingers flying across the keyboard as she initiated the comprehensive data transfer she'd prepared over years of careful planning. security protocols, research data, personnel files, distribution networks for Blue Chrysalis, evidence of kidnapped scientists, financial transactions, everything needed to dismantle Eastern Horizon's entire operation streamed to her secure server. 5 minutes into the 7-minute window, a progress bar indicated 83% completion when the laboratory door burst open. Sarah didn't need to look up to know who had entered. "I'm disappointed, Elizabeth," Ronald Maxwell said, his voice almost conversational despite the circumstances. 14 years of compliance only to attempt something so predictable. Sarah continued typing, determined to complete the transfer. "You were moving me to Singapore. I had nothing to lose." "On the contrary," Maxwell moved closer, signaling to the security personnel flanking him. "You had your family's continued safety to lose. A guarantee that now expires." Sarah's fingers froze on the keyboard. "What have you done?" "Nothing yet. But your husband and children have made it remarkably easy by coming to Hong Kong." Maxwell smiled thinly at her shocked expression. "Yes, they're here, apparently investigating Blue Chrysalis. Your son Jason is quite the corporate attorney, and Emma has become an impressive physician. As for young Kevin, his cybersecurity skills nearly rivaled yours." Terror unlike anything Sarah had felt in 14 years coursed through her. "If you harm them, you'll what?" Maxwell's voice hardened. "You've already played your hand, Sarah. The only question now is whether your family joins you in captivity or meets a more permanent end." Sarah's mind raced. The data transfer had reached 91%. If it completed, if the information reached the authorities, there would be a chance, slim perhaps but real, that international law enforcement could intercept Maxwell's plans before her family was harmed. "They know nothing," she said, stalling. "They're just looking for me. And they're about to find you, though perhaps not as they hoped." Maxwell checked his watch. "In fact, 2 of them are attending our conference presentation as we speak. The other 2 are at their hotel, attempting to hack into our systems." His smile returned. "Your son is talented, but our cybersecurity detected his intrusion almost immediately." Sarah felt sick. After 14 years of protecting her family through compliance, they were now walking directly into Maxwell's trap. "What do you want?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Complete cooperation. No more sabotage of the formula. No more hidden adjustments that cause the compound to degrade. Your full brilliance applied to our objectives." Maxwell's eyes narrowed. "Do that, and your family lives, here with you under our supervision. Resist in any way, and they die, starting with your husband." The data transfer reached 98%. "Just a few more seconds. I need proof they're unharmed," Sarah demanded, fighting to keep her voice steady. Maxwell pulled out his phone, displaying a live security feed from the Grand Harbor Hotel Conference Center. Sarah's heart clenched painfully as she saw Emma, her little girl, now a poised professional woman, moving through the exhibition area. And Jason, so like his father, tall and serious in an impeccable suit. "As you can see, they're perfectly fine. For now." Maxwell pocketed the phone. "Security teams are in position. 1 word from me and they'll be taken or eliminated. Your choice." The transfer completed with a soft chime. Wherever her family was, whatever danger they face, Sarah had just released enough evidence to bring down Eastern Horizon's entire operation. If that evidence reached the right people in time. "I'll cooperate," she said, meeting Maxwell's gaze steadily. "But I want to see them. All of them. Today." "That can be arranged." Maxwell gestured to the security team. "Take Sudhakar, Chen to containment room A. Full protocol. No communications access." As the guards moved to escort her, Sarah noted Maxwell already on his phone, issuing rapid instructions that undoubtedly concerned her family. She had perhaps hours at most before Maxwell would bring Michael and their children to the facility, either as leverage to ensure her continued cooperation or as fellow prisoners. Unless her data transfer succeeded in alerting authorities first, unless by some miracle, 14 years of meticulous planning and 1 desperate gamble paid off before Maxwell's forces could reach her family. Sarah allowed herself to be led away, her expression revealing nothing of the turmoil within. She had done everything possible to protect her family from afar for 14 years. Now with them so close yet in terrible danger, she could only hope it had been enough. Michael Miller's hotel room had transformed into a crisis command center, with Kevin coordinating with Agent Zhao, while Michael reviewed satellite imagery of the research facility where they believed Sarah was being held. "Eastern Horizon's security has been activated facility-wide," Kevin reported, eyes fixed on his multiple screens. Whatever Mom did must have triggered their highest threat protocols. And now they've identified Emma and Jason at the conference? Michael said grimly. We need extraction options immediately. Agent Zhao's voice came through the speakerphone. My team is moving to intercept at the conference center, but we may be too late. Our surveillance indicates Emma Miller has been detained by Maxwell's security personnel. Michael's heart constricted with fear. And Jason? Still unaccounted for. He may have evaded the initial sweep. What about the evidence Mom was trying to transfer? Kevin asked. If it reached authorities, we've received nothing through official channels, Agent Zhao replied. If Dr. Miller managed to send something, it either hasn't arrived or went to different agencies. Michael made a swift decision. We can't wait for official channels. Kevin, grab only essentials. We're moving now. To the conference center? Kevin was already closing laptops, gathering crucial equipment. No, to the research facility. If Sarah triggered their security protocols and they've identified Emma and Jason, that's where they'll take them. We need to be there. Dad, that's a highly secured compound. We can't just drive up to the front gate. Michael's expression hardened with a determination his children rarely saw. I've spent 14 years adapting to limitations, finding alternative approaches when direct paths were blocked. Trust me, we'll find a way in. Within minutes, they had gathered their essential gear and were heading for the door when Kevin's phone alerted with an incoming message from an unknown sender. Dad, look at this, he said, frowning at the screen. It's an encrypted file transfer from, I can't trace the source, but the decryption key is Chrysalis Blue MIT 1989. Michael froze. That's the year Sarah and I met at MIT. Kevin quickly applied the key, and the file opened to reveal a massive data cache along with a brief message. Michael, if you're receiving this, I've been compromised, but my evidence transfer succeeded. Eastern Horizon knows you're in Hong Kong. They will use me to lure you in. Do not come. Send this to authorities immediately. I've loved you and our children every day of these 14 years. Sarah, she's alive, Michael whispered, joy and fear colliding as he absorbed the confirmation they'd sought for so long. And she knew somehow that we were here, that we were looking for her. Kevin was already scanning the attached files. Dad, this is everything. Security layouts of the facility, guard rotations, access codes, comprehensive evidence of their operation. Mom has been gathering intelligence for years planning this. Michael's mind raced, processing implications and possibilities. Forward everything to Agent Zhao and the DEA immediately. But we're still going. If they have Emma and they're looking for Jason, we can't wait for official channels to mobilize. But Mom specifically said not to come, that it's a trap. Of course it is, Michael acknowledged. But after 14 years apart, I'm not leaving your mother or your sister in Maxwell's hands for a moment longer than necessary. Besides, he added with grim determination, they'll expect an extraction team, official response protocols. They won't expect a physicist in a wheelchair and a computer scientist. Kevin nodded slowly, understanding his father's logic. The unexpected approach. Exactly. And with your mother's inside information, we might just have a chance. Michael checked his watch. We have perhaps an hour before they consolidate their security position. Let's move. As they left the hotel room, Michael couldn't help but think of the message Sarah had sent. 14 years of love expressed in one desperate warning. Whatever happened next, he now knew with certainty that she had never abandoned them, that she had thought of them every day of her captivity, just as they had thought of her. The knowledge strengthened his resolve. 14 years ago, he had been helpless to prevent Sarah's abduction, confined to his wheelchair, while others searched fruitlessly for his wife. This time would be different. This time, Michael Miller would bring Sarah home, or join her in captivity. Either way, their family's long separation was about to end. Emma Miller had faced emergencies as an ER doctor that would terrify most people, but nothing had prepared her for the cold, calculating malice in Ronald Maxwell's eyes as his security personnel escorted her through the Eastern Horizon Research Facility. Your mother has been quite cooperative for 14 years, Maxwell remarked conversationally as they walked. One small act of defiance, and the entire family rushes to Hong Kong. Touching, if inconvenient. Emma maintained her silence, observing and memorizing their route through the complex, information that might prove vital if an opportunity for escape presented itself. Nothing to say, Dr. Miller? Your professional curiosity doesn't extend to the facility where your mother has been advancing neuropharmaceutical science for over a decade? Where is she? Emma finally asked. her voice level despite her racing heart. Waiting for you. And soon, the rest of your family will join us. Your brother Jason proved more elusive at the conference, but we'll locate him shortly. As for your father and younger brother, Maxwell checked his phone. They've left their hotel, predictably headed this way, I imagine. The knot in Emma's stomach tightened. This had been exactly what Agent Zhao had warned against. Fragmented, uncoordinated actions that allowed Eastern Horizon to pick them off individually. They turned down a sterile corridor lined with laboratories, most empty but a few occupied by scientists who carefully avoided eye contact as the group passed. Finally, they stopped at a secure door labeled Containment A. A family reunion, Maxwell said, activating the security panel. 14 years overdue. The door slid open to reveal a sparse room with reinforced walls, minimal furniture, and a single occupant sitting rigidly on a metal chair. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Despite the silver hair replacing the blonde she remembered, despite the years etched into her face, there was no mistaking Sarah Miller. For a moment, neither spoke, both frozen in disbelief that this moment, imagined countless times over 14 years, was actually happening under such dire circumstances. Emma, Sarah whispered, rising slowly, as if afraid sudden movement might make the apparition before her disappear. Oh my God, Emma! Emma stood rooted to the spot, overwhelmed by the collision of memory and reality. The mother she remembered, confident, vibrant, always in motion, had been replaced by this thin, cautious woman with haunted eyes. But when Sarah smiled tremulously, Emma saw the familiar crinkles around her eyes, the gentle curve of her lips that had kissed away childhood tears. Mom, she managed, her physician's composure cracking. It's really you. Maxwell observed their reunion with clinical detachment. I'll leave you to catch up. Family is so important after all. He gestured to the guards. Secure the room. No communication in or out except through me personally. As the door closed behind him, mother and daughter remained suspended in mutual disbelief until, as if by mutual decision, they rushed toward each other. Emma found herself engulfed in an embrace both familiar and strange, her mother's arms remembering exactly how to hold her, despite the 14 years that had transformed a teenage girl into a woman. I'm so sorry, Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face as she cradled Emma's head against her shoulder. I never wanted to leave you, never wanted any of this. Emma pulled back just enough to look into her mother's face. We knew, Mom. Dad never believed you left voluntarily, not for a second. Sarah's eyes closed briefly at the mention of Michael. Your father, is he here too? In Hong Kong? We all are. Dad, Jason, Kevin. We came as soon as we made the connection between Blue Chrysalis and your research. Emma squeezed her mother's hands. Dad recognized the molecular structure immediately when the DEA showed him samples. He said only you could have created something so sophisticated. A shadow crossed Sarah's face. Blue Chrysalis was never supposed to exist. I've been sabotaging the formula for years, introducing instabilities that would limit its effectiveness, trying to delay full production while I gathered evidence against Eastern Horizon. Her expression grew urgent. Emma, you shouldn't have come. None of you should. Maxwell will use you to ensure my complete cooperation going forward. We couldn't not come, Emma replied simply. Not when we finally had a real lead after 14 years. Sarah guided Emma to the room's small table, keeping hold of her hand as if afraid she might vanish. Tell me about everyone, please. The photographs Maxwell showed me, they tell me nothing of who you've all become. Despite their dire circumstances, Emma found herself smiling. Jason's a corporate attorney specializing in pharmaceutical law. He always said he wanted to understand the industry that took you from us. He's married to Rebecca, a pediatric nurse. They have a 4-year-old daughter named Sarah. I'm a grandmother? Sarah's voice broke with mingled joy and grief for all she had missed. Emma nodded. Little Sarah is brilliant and stubborn, completely your granddaughter. And Kevin, he's finishing his computer science degree at Stanford. Genius-level programming skills. He was only 4 when you disappeared, so his memories of you are fragmented, but he's never stopped trying to piece them together. And your father? Sarah asked softly, her eyes filled with both longing and fear for the answer. Still teaching physics at Boston University. Still the most brilliant mind in the room, though he'd never admit it. Emma squeezed her mother's hand. He never remarried, never even dated as far as we know. He kept your research journals, your unfinished papers. Completed some of them himself in your absence. Sarah closed her eyes briefly, absorbing these glimpses of the life that had continued without her. And you, a doctor, clearly. Emergency medicine at Chicago Memorial. I wanted to help people in crisis, people whose lives were torn apart in an instant. Emma didn't need to explain why she had chosen that path. I'm so proud of you, Sarah said, touching Emma's face gently. Of all of you. You've built beautiful lives despite everything. Incomplete lives, Emma corrected. We've never stopped looking for you, never stopped feeling your absence. Sarah's expression darkened with renewed urgency. Emma, listen to me. Before Maxwell brought you here, I managed to transfer evidence, everything I've gathered on Eastern Horizon's operations over 14 years, to a secure server programmed to forward to authorities. But Maxwell's security team has already identified your family. They're actively hunting Jason and will be coming for your father and Kevin. Emma quickly updated her mother on their situation. Jason's status unknown after the conference. Michael and Kevin likely headed toward the facility after receiving her data transfer. They wouldn't wait for official backup, Sarah said, shaking her head with a mixture of frustration and fond recognition. Michael never could stand by when his family was in danger. Even after his accident, even from his wheelchair, he always found a way to act. And that's exactly what he's doing now, Emma confirmed. Dad's changed in some ways since you've been gone, more deliberate, more patient, but when it matters, he's still the same man. Sarah pressed her hands against her eyes, clearly struggling to maintain focus through the emotional overwhelm. If they're coming here, we need to be ready. Maxwell won't hesitate to use us against each other. The moment he has all of us in custody, our leverage disappears completely. Emma recognized the shift in her mother's demeanor, from the emotional reunion to the strategic assessment of their situation. This was the brilliant scientist she remembered, the woman who approached problems with methodical clarity even under extreme pressure. What's our play? Emma asked, matching her mother's tone. Sarah leaned closer, lowering her voice despite the room's apparent emptiness. Maxwell doesn't know exactly what information I transferred or to whom. That uncertainty is our only advantage. She glanced around the room, eyes calculating. This containment room has certain vulnerabilities. The ventilation system, for instance, is separate from the main complex for biohazard control purposes. Emma followed her mother's gaze to the ceiling vent. You've been planning an escape? For 14 years, Sarah confirmed, but never with enough certainty to risk it. The potential consequences to you and the family were too severe. She gripped Emma's hands. Now that calculus has changed, if Maxwell gets his hands on all of you, we lose any chance of freedom. So we move before that happens, Emma concluded. But how? This room is monitored, surely. Sarah's mouth quirked in a ghost of her old smile. One advantage of being the resident genius is knowing exactly how the monitoring systems work and how to temporarily disable them. She reached beneath the collar of her lab coat, withdrawing a small device concealed on a thin chain. Lynn, another scientist held here, helped me modify this from components I've collected over years. It creates a 7-minute electromagnetic disruption to the surveillance systems. Emma's medical training had included enough emergency technology to understand the concept. When do we use it? When we have the best chance of reaching your father and Kevin before Maxwell does. Sarah hesitated, then asked the question Emma could see had been burning in her since their reunion began. Your father, his condition, is he still in the wheelchair? Yes, Emma confirmed gently. The nerve damage was too extensive for full recovery with current medical technology. But he's adapted remarkably. You wouldn't believe how nimble he's become maneuvering that chair. Something flickered in Sarah's eyes. Determination, perhaps, or renewed purpose. The original chrysalis formula, she said quietly. The real one. Not the perverted version Maxwell forced me to develop. It could potentially help him regenerate some of the damaged neural pathways. Mom, Emma began, but Sarah shook her head. Not now. First, we survive this. First, we get our family back. Her expression hardened with 14 years of accumulated resolve. Maxwell thinks he's using you to control me. He doesn't understand what he's actually done by bringing us together. Emma saw in her mother's face the woman she remembered from childhood. Brilliant, determined, unstoppable when protecting those she loved. 14 years of captivity had not broken Sarah Miller. They had tempered her, like steel forged in fire. So what's the plan? Emma asked. Sarah leaned forward, voice barely above a whisper, as she outlined what they would need to do when the opportunity presented itself. As she listened, Emma felt a surreal sense of displacement. discussing escape strategies with the mother she hadn't seen in 14 years, in a containment room in a secret research facility in Hong Kong. Yet underlying the strangeness was a profound rightness, a sense of pieces falling into place after 14 years of misalignment. Whatever happened next, the Miller family had begun the process of reunification. Whether in freedom or captivity, they would face it together. Jason Miller pressed himself against the wall of the service corridor, listening intently for pursuing footsteps. After narrowly avoiding capture at the conference center, he had used the emergency evacuation chaos to slip away. But Eastern Horizon's security personnel were still actively searching the building. His earpiece had gone silent, communications likely compromised, leaving him isolated and uncertain of Emma's status or his father and Kevin's location. Standard protocols would direct him to the predetermined extraction point, but instinct told him that would be the first place Maxwell's people would look. His phone vibrated with an incoming message. Cautiously, he checked the screen to find a text from an unknown number. East Service Entrance. Black van. 2 minutes. Agent Zhao. Jason weighed his options swiftly. Could be legitimate, could be a trap, but remaining in the building with security closing in offered diminishing chances of escape. He navigated the service corridors using the hotel's kitchen and staff areas to avoid the main halls where security would be concentrated. As he approached the East Service entrance, he spotted the black van idling just outside, engine running. Taking a deep breath, Jason pushed through the door and sprinted toward the vehicle. The side door slid open to reveal not Agent Zhao, but Kevin. "Get in," his younger brother urged. Quickly, Jason dove into the van, which accelerated immediately, doors barely closed. At the wheel was a stone-faced Agent Zhao with Michael in the passenger seat, wheelchair folded behind him. "Emma?" Jason asked immediately, scanning the van's interior. Michael's expression confirmed his fears before words were necessary. "It taken. Maxwell's people intercepted her at the conference. They're holding her at the research facility. With Mom," Kevin added, turning his laptop to show Jason's security schematics of the compound. "We received a data transfer from Mom right before communications went dark. She's been gathering intelligence on Eastern Horizon for years, including complete facility layouts and security protocols." Jason processed this information rapidly. "So we know she's alive, and she knows we're here." Michael nodded, his face set with the determined focus Jason recognized from countless family crises over the years. "She specifically warned us not to come after her, that Maxwell would use us as leverage to ensure her cooperation. And we're obviously ignoring that warning," Jason noted, a grim smile forming. "Obviously," Michael confirmed, "but we're not going in blind. Your mother's intelligence gives us a significant advantage Maxwell doesn't expect us to have." Agent Zhao maneuvered the van through Hong Kong's congested streets with practiced efficiency. I've forwarded Dr. Miller's evidence to DEA headquarters and local authorities, but official response will take time to mobilize. We're looking at a minimum of 4 hours before a proper tactical team can be assembled and deployed. By which time Maxwell could have moved both Sarah and Emma, Michael pointed out. Or worse. Jason examined the facility schematics Kevin had displayed. "So what's our play? We can't exactly storm the compound with just the 4 of us." "We don't need to," Michael replied, pulling up additional diagrams on his tablet. "According to your mother's intelligence, there's a vulnerability in the facility's northeastern perimeter where the security system connects to an external power grid. Kevin can create a localized disruption that will trigger emergency protocols, redirecting security personnel temporarily. During that window, Agent Zhao and I will enter through the maintenance access point indicated in Mom's schematics," Kevin continued. "Once inside, we can reach the security hub and disable the interior monitoring systems." Jason studied his father. "And what will you and I be doing during this?" Michael's expression was unreadable. "Creating a distraction of our own. One Maxwell won't be able to ignore." "You're going to offer yourself as bait," Jason realized. "Walk right up to the front door." "Roll up to it, technically," Michael corrected with dark humor. "Maxwell wants me most of all. The husband he's kept Sarah from for 14 years. The leverage he needs to ensure her continued cooperation." "Dad, that's insane," Jason protested. "They'll immediately take you captive." "Exactly. And when they do, they'll follow standard containment protocols, which according to your mother's intelligence, means bringing me to the same secure area where they're holding her and Emma." Jason understood the strategy but hated it nonetheless. While Kevin and Agent Zhao disabled the security systems. "Creating an opportunity for escape," Michael confirmed. "It's our best option given the circumstances and resources available." The van turned onto a less developed road leading away from the city center, mountainous terrain becoming visible in the distance. The research facility would be coming into view soon. "It's dangerous," Agent Zhao noted, practical rather than pessimistic. "If any element fails, if Maxwell deviates from expected protocols, then we improvise," Michael interrupted firmly. "But we don't leave Sarah and Emma in that facility a moment longer than necessary." Jason studied his father, seeing beyond the strategic planning to the emotional undercurrents. For 14 years, Michael Miller had maintained the family, had channeled his grief and uncertainty into raising 3 children while confined to a wheelchair. He had never given up hope of finding Sarah, never stopped believing in her, even when evidence seemed non-existent. Now, with reunion tantalizingly close, Michael was prepared to risk everything. Because some things, some people were worth any risk. "All right," Jason conceded, "but we modify the plan. I come with you to the front entrance." "That puts 2 potential hostages in Maxwell's hands," Agent Zhao objected. "It also makes the distraction more credible," Jason countered. "A father and son coming together is more plausible than Dad arriving alone. And it doubles our presence inside the containment area when the opportunity for escape presents itself." Michael considered this, then nodded. "Agreed. Kevin goes with Agent Zhao through the maintenance access. You and I take the direct approach." As the facility came into view, a modern complex nestled against the mountainside, surrounded by high-security fencing and surveillance equipment, each of them felt the weight of what they were about to attempt. Failure meant captivity or worse for all of them. Success meant the end of 14 years of separation. "One more thing," Michael said, as Agent Zhao parked the van in a concealed location near the northeastern perimeter. "Whatever happens in there, whatever condition we find your mother in, remember that she has endured 14 years of captivity to protect us. Her actions, her choices, everything she's done has been to keep our family safe." The unspoken implication was clear. Sarah might not be the same woman they remembered. 14 years under Maxwell's control might have changed her in ways they couldn't anticipate. They needed to be prepared for that possibility. "She's still Mom," Kevin said firmly. "Whatever they've done to her, whatever they've made her do, that hasn't changed." Jason and Michael exchanged glances, sharing a moment of understanding. The boy who barely remembered his mother spoke with the certainty of a son's love, uncomplicated by the detailed memories the rest of them carried. "You're right," Michael agreed, squeezing Kevin's shoulder. "She's still Sarah, still your mother, and we're going to bring her home." As they prepared for their respective missions, checking equipment and reviewing the facility layout one final time, Jason found himself thinking of his own daughter, 4-year-old Sarah, named for the grandmother she had never met. He had promised her he would find her namesake someday. Now that promise was within reach of fulfillment. "We move in 20 minutes, Agent Zhao announced, checking her weapon. "Synchronize watches and communication devices. Once the operation begins, maintain radio silence unless absolutely necessary." Michael looked at each of them in turn. His sons, grown into remarkable men during Sarah's absence. Agent Zhao, whose professional detachment couldn't quite mask her respect for their family's determination. Then he turned toward the facility where his wife had been held captive for 14 years. "Let's bring them home," he said simply. The plan was in motion. The Miller family, fractured for 14 years, was on the verge of reunification. Whether that reunion would occur in freedom or captivity remained to be seen. But one thing was certain. After today, they would face whatever came next together. Ronald Maxwell studied the security feed with narrowed eyes, observing the emotional reunion between Sarah and Emma Miller with clinical detachment. After 14 years of controlling Sarah through threats to her family, he now had a more direct form of leverage. Her daughter, physically present and vulnerable. "Sir, we've lost contact with the surveillance team at the Grand Harbor Hotel," his security chief reported. Jason Miller appears to have evaded capture during the evacuation. Maxwell's jaw tightened imperceptibly. "And the husband? The younger son? No longer at their hotel. Their current whereabouts are unknown." "Find them," Maxwell ordered sharply. "Mom. They'll be coming here." Michael Miller has spent 14 years searching for his wife. He won't stop now that he's this close. As if summoned by his words, another security officer entered with urgent news. "Sir, we have a situation at the main gate. 2 men requesting entry, identifying themselves as Michael and Jason Miller." Maxwell's surprise quickly transformed into satisfaction. So predictable. "Escort them to my office immediately. Full security protocol." "Should we inform Dr. Chen?" the officer asked. No. Let her wonder a while longer. Maxwell straightened his tie, a calculating smile forming. After 14 years, I believe I've earned the right to oversee this family reunion personally. Michael Miller had faced many challenging situations since his accident, but few as intimidating as the Eastern Horizon security gate with its armed guards and surveillance systems. Beside him, Jason stood ramrod straight, projecting a confidence neither of them fully felt. "We're here to see Ronald Maxwell," Michael announced to the intercom, his voice steady. "Tell him Michael and Jason Miller are requesting an audience." A tense silence followed, the guards' expressions revealing nothing as communications presumably occurred behind the scenes. Michael used the moment to assess the facility's visible security measures, comparing them to Sarah's intelligence. Everything matched her detailed schematics, a testament to her meticulous observation over 14 years of captivity. Finally, the gates began to open. "Remain in your vehicle," a guard instructed. "You will be escorted to the main building." "I don't have a vehicle," Michael replied evenly. "I have a wheelchair." He gestured to Jason. "My son will assist me." This disruption to protocol created a momentary confusion that Michael had anticipated, a small advantage as the guards reassessed the situation. Finally, they were permitted to proceed through the gate, Jason pushing Michael's wheelchair along the paved approach to the main building. "Northeastern quadrant," Michael murmured under his breath, barely moving his lips. "Kevin should be accessing the maintenance entrance now." Jason gave an imperceptible nod, his gaze seemingly casual as he surveyed the compound. To anyone observing, they appeared as expected. A concerned father and son, possibly desperate, certainly outmatched, coming to negotiate for their loved ones. What no one could see was the miniaturized device concealed within Michael's wheelchair. A signal disruptor Kevin had configured to interfere with the facility's internal communications at a specific frequency when activated. A small advantage, but potentially crucial in what was to come. Armed security personnel flanked them as they entered the main building. The sterile environment reminiscent of high-level research facilities Michael had visited during his academic career. The clinical efficiency of the space made Sarah's 14-year imprisonment here seem all the more horrific. They were escorted through several security checkpoints, each more restrictive than the last, until they reached what appeared to be an executive floor. Outside an imposing door, they were stopped for a final security scan. "Weapons?" one guard asked perfunctorily, clearly not expecting academics to be armed. "Just my brain," Michael replied, with a coldness that momentarily surprised Jason. Though after 14 years, I imagine Ronald might consider that weapon enough. The guard's expression flickered briefly, the first indication that the Miller name carried recognition beyond Maxwell's immediate circle. Perhaps Sarah had spoken of her family during her captivity, creating a humanizing context even within this sterile facility. The doors opened to reveal a spacious office with panoramic views of the mountainous terrain surrounding the compound. Ronald Maxwell stood behind a sleek desk, his posture relaxed yet commanding. "Professor Miller," he greeted as if welcoming a colleague, rather than the husband of a woman he had kept prisoner for 14 years. "And Jason, how remarkable to have 2 generations of Millers visit our humble research facility." His smile never reached his cold eyes. "Though I believe we're still missing Kevin to complete the set." Michael maintained a calm exterior despite the fury coursing through him at finally confronting the man responsible for Sarah's abduction. "You know why we're here?" "Of course. A family reunion has been long overdue." Maxwell gestured to the chairs positioned before his desk. "Though I confess, I'm curious how you made the connection after all these years." "We've been quite careful." "Blue chrysalis," Michael replied simply. "A brilliant neural pathway compound with a distinctive cobalt blue color. Did you really think I wouldn't recognize my wife's work when it appeared on the global market?" Maxwell's expression registered genuine surprise. "Ah, the product launch. A business necessity after years of limited distribution. Risk versus reward, you understand." "Where is my wife?" Michael demanded, dispensing with the pretense of polite conversation. "Safe, as is your daughter." Maxwell leaned forward slightly. "Their continued safety depends entirely on how this conversation progresses. So let's be direct. What exactly are you hoping to accomplish by coming here?" "We want to see them," Jason interjected. "Then we can discuss terms." "Terms?" Maxwell raised an eyebrow. "I'm afraid you misunderstand your position. You are not here to negotiate. You are here because I allowed you to enter." His voice hardened. "Your wife has been an invaluable asset for 14 years, Professor Miller. With her brilliance and my resources, We've created pharmaceutical innovations worth billions, both legitimate and otherwise. Forced innovations, Michael corrected. Coerced through threats against her family. Maxwell shrugged. Effective motivation. Sarah's maternal instincts proved quite the leverage point. She'd do anything to protect you and the children, adjust formulas, develop new compounds, even sabotage her own work when she thought we wouldn't notice. A cold smile formed. She's been quite the adversary in her quiet way. It's almost a shame to neutralize that resistance by actually having you all here. Jason tensed beside his father, understanding the implication. You're planning to keep us all. Family reunification through shared captivity, Maxwell confirmed with mock sympathy. Not ideal from your perspective, I'm sure, but quite efficient from mine. Sarah's full cooperation, guaranteed by your physical presence, will accelerate our research initiatives tremendously. Michael's hands tightened on his wheelchair armrests. And if we resist, then the reunion will be short-lived for some of you. Maxwell's tone made the threat explicit. Starting with the youngest. Kevin is still unaccounted for, I believe. Michael met Maxwell's gaze steadily, revealing nothing of Kevin's actual location or their larger plan. Every moment they kept Maxwell engaged was another moment for Kevin and Agent Zhao to penetrate the facility's security systems. We came voluntarily, he said instead. Surely that demonstrates our willingness to cooperate if it means seeing Sarah and Emma. Maxwell studied him thoughtfully, then nodded. A reasonable request. Consider it granted. He pressed an intercom button. Bring Dr. Chen and the daughter to my office. The immediate compliance with their request was unexpected, raising Michael's suspicions. Maxwell was too calculating to make such a concession without purpose. While we wait, Maxwell continued, perhaps you'd satisfy my curiosity about something, Professor Miller. In all these years, did you never consider moving on? Finding someone new? Sarah was convinced you wouldn't, that your devotion was absolute. But I found that difficult to believe. 14 years is a long time for a man to remain unfulfilled. The deliberate provocation was transparent, designed to unsettle Michael before Sarah arrived. He refused to engage. I'm a physicist, Maxwell. We understand time differently. 14 years is nothing in the cosmic scale. Maxwell's smile thinned at the non-answer. You academics and your abstract perspectives. In the real world, people move on, adapt, accept changed circumstances. Is that what you told my wife to make her compliant? Jason asked, voice tight with controlled anger. That we had forgotten her? Replaced her? A shadow of genuine amusement crossed Maxwell's face. On the contrary, I made sure she received regular updates on your lives. Photographs, news clippings, recordings when possible. Her awareness of your continued existence was essential to maintaining leverage. He looked directly at Michael. She kept a photograph of you by her bedside for 14 years, Professor. Quite the devoted wife, despite everything. The revelation sent a surge of emotion through Michael that he carefully contained. Sarah had maintained that connection, that tether to her family through 14 years of isolation and coercion. Before he could respond, the office door opened. 2 security officers entered first, followed by Emma, and then Sarah. 14 years dissolved in an instant as Michael's eyes found hers across the room. The physical changes, silver hair replacing blonde, lines marking a face once smooth, the careful way she held herself, registered peripherally. What captured him completely was the essential Sarah-ness that remained unchanged. The intelligence in her eyes, the slight lift of her chin that signaled determination, the way her gaze immediately sought his with a hunger born of 14 years separation. Michael, she whispered, his name on her lips, a benediction and a lament simultaneously. For a moment, no one else in the room existed. Not Maxwell watching with clinical interest. Not the security personnel positioned strategically by the doors. Not even their children witnessing this reunion of parents separated for nearly a third of their married life. Then Sarah's composure broke. She moved toward him with a strangled sound, dropping to her knees beside his wheelchair, her hands finding his face as if to confirm his physical reality. You came, Shim, she said, voice breaking. I told you not to come. Michael's hands covered hers, warm and solid against her cold fingers. Did you really think I wouldn't? I knew you would, she admitted, a ghost of a smile forming. I just hoped for once you'd be sensible instead of brave. Jason stepped forward, his own eyes suspiciously bright as his mother rose to embrace him. We all inherited your stubbornness, Mom. None of us could stay away once we knew where to look. Emma moved to join them, completing the partial family circle. For a suspended moment, they existed in a bubble of reconnection. 4/5 of a family fractured for 14 years, finding each other again under the most desperate circumstances. How touching, Maxwell observed, shattering the moment. The Millers reunited at last. Almost all of them, anyway. He checked his watch. Speaking of which, my security teams should be reporting on Kevin's whereabouts any moment now. Sarah's eyes flicked to Michael's, a silent question that he answered with an imperceptible shake of his head. Not captured. Proceeding with the plan. Maxwell rose from behind his desk, moving to stand before them with the confidence of absolute control. Now then, let's discuss the new arrangement. Dr. Chen, or Miller, if you prefer to revert to your actual name, will continue her research with significantly expanded responsibilities. The rest of you will be provided appropriate accommodations within the facility. Comfortable but secure. Prisoners, Emma stated flatly. Guests with limited mobility options, Maxwell corrected with mock politeness. Your mother has been quite productive here for 14 years. I see no reason why the arrangement can't work for the entire family. Michael's hand found Sarah's, squeezing gently, a signal. Almost time. And if we refuse? He asked, deliberately drawing Maxwell's focus. That option isn't available, Maxwell replied coldly. But if cooperation proves challenging, we have methods to ensure compliance. Starting with the youngest members of the family. His gaze shifted to Emma. Your medical expertise could be valuable, Dr. Miller. Or it could become unnecessary, depending on your mother's willingness to fully commit to her work without the adjustments she's been making to formulas. Sarah stiffened beside Michael, and he felt the tremor that ran through her. This threat was familiar to her. The same one that had kept her compliant for 14 years, now extended to include their physical presence. You've miscalculated, Ronald, Sarah said, her voice steadier than her hands. Having my family here doesn't increase your leverage. It eliminates it. What can you threaten me with now that we're all together? Maxwell's smile was genuinely chilling. Separation of a more permanent nature, Dr. Miller. Surely after 14 years, you understand I don't make idle threats. Before she could respond, the office intercom buzzed urgently. Maxwell pressed the button with visible irritation at the interruption. This had better be important. Sir, we have a security breach in Sector 7, came the tense response. Multiple systems failing, communications disrupted. Possible external intrusion. Kevin and Agent Zhao had succeeded in the first phase of their mission. Michael squeezed Sarah's hand again, harder this time. Now. Investigate immediately, Maxwell ordered. Full lockdown protocols. As security personnel began to move, Michael activated the device concealed in his wheelchair. Immediately, the office lights flickered, the electronic door locks clicked audibly, and Maxwell's computer screens went dark. What the? Maxwell began, but Sarah was already moving. With the precision of someone who had rehearsed this moment in her mind countless times, she reached beneath her lab coat and activated the electromagnetic disruptor she had shown Emma earlier. The security cameras in the corners of the office went dark. Secondary systems compromise, she announced to her family. We have approximately 6 minutes before backup protocols engage. Maxwell lunged for his desk, presumably for a weapon or emergency communication device. But Jason intercepted him with the speed and precision of someone whose collegiate wrestling career had taught him how to neutralize larger opponents. A swift, controlled tackle brought Maxwell to the ground. Emma, the guards, Michael directed. Emma was already moving, medical knowledge guiding her as she delivered precisely targeted strikes to pressure points that temporarily incapacitated the security personnel before they could react to the suddenly changed situation. Sarah rushed to Maxwell's desk, fingers flying across a secondary keyboard that emerged from a hidden compartment. Accessing emergency override, she muttered, years of accumulated knowledge of the facility's systems now turned against her captors. Initiating containment breach protocols in Sectors 3 through 6. What are you doing? Maxwell demanded, struggling against Jason's restraining hold. Creating confusion, Sarah replied without looking up. When multiple containment sectors indicate breaches simultaneously, security protocols dictate personnel distribution across all affected areas, effectively thinning your response capacity while triggering automatic notifications to external regulatory agencies. Michael wheeled to her side, watching in undisguised admiration as his wife systematically dismantled the security infrastructure that had held her captive for 14 years. Kevin and Agent Zhao are targeting the main security hub. Once they gain access, we'll have a clear exit path through the northeast maintenance corridor, Sarah completed, their minds synchronizing despite 14 years apart. I've memorized the patrol patterns. With the current disruptions, we have an 87% probability of reaching the perimeter before full response mobilization. Emma secured the incapacitated guards with their own restraints, then joined her parents. What about the other scientists? The ones being held like you? Sarah hesitated, conflict visible in her expression. Lynn, there are others. But evacuating them significantly decreases our success probability. We can't leave them, Emma insisted. We won't, Michael assured her, making the decision Sarah was struggling with. Secure our exit route first. Then we send in appropriate authorities with your evidence. Sarah nodded gratefully at his understanding of the impossible choice she faced. After 14 years of powerlessness, priorities had become brutally clear. Family first, then justice for the others. You'll never make it out, Maxwell snarled from the floor. This facility has redundant security systems, armed response teams. Even if you reach the perimeter, where will you go? My organization has resources throughout Asia. Your organization is already compromised, Michael informed him calmly. Sarah's data transfer succeeded hours ago. DEA, Interpol, and Hong Kong authorities have everything they need to dismantle Eastern Horizon completely. We're not just escaping, Maxwell. We're leaving you to face justice. Sarah completed her sabotage of the security systems and turned to face her captor of 14 years. For a moment, she simply looked at him. The man who had stolen her life, forced her to create destruction instead of healing, kept her from watching her children grow. You know what the irony is, Ronald? She said finally. I could have given you legitimate miracles. The real chrysalis formula, the original one I developed for neural regeneration, could have transformed medicine, helped millions, made you billions legally. Instead, you chose this. She turned away from him dismissively, her focus returning to her family, to Michael waiting in his wheelchair, to Emma and Jason standing ready, to the thought of Kevin working elsewhere in the facility. We need to move, she said. 5 minutes until secondary systems engage. Maxwell made a final, desperate lunge against Jason's hold, nearly breaking free in a surge of adrenaline-fueled strength. But Jason, anticipating the move, countered with practiced precision, securing Maxwell's arms behind his back with restraints taken from one of the incapacitated guards. You've had 14 years of control, Jason told him coldly. That ends today. With Maxwell and his security personnel neutralized, the Miller family moved swiftly to execute their escape. Sarah led them through the office's private exit, a route typically used only by Maxwell himself, bypassing the main security checkpoints. The northeastern corridor should intersect with Kevin's infiltration route, Sarah explained as they navigated the sterile hallways, Michael's wheelchair moving with surprising speed and agility. Assuming they've reached the security hub, they have, Michael confirmed, checking a small tracking device concealed in his watch. Kevin's signal shows they've established control of central operations. Emma, bringing up the rear to guard against pursuit, marveled at how quickly her parents had fallen into synchronized action, despite their 14-year separation. The connection between them transcended time and distance, muscle memory of their partnership reasserting itself in this moment of crisis. They reached a junction where the executive wing met the main research corridor. Sarah raised a hand, signaling them to halt as she peered cautiously around the corner. 2 guards, she whispered. Standard response to containment breaches is to secure transit points between sectors. Can we go around? Jason asked. Sarah shook her head. Not without adding significant time and risk. She turned to Michael, a question in her eyes. He nodded, understanding her unspoken plan. Do it. Sarah removed a small vial from her lab coat pocket. Aerosolized neurosedative. Non-lethal, but fast-acting. I've been synthesizing it in small batches for years, preparing for this possibility. Jason raised an eyebrow. You've been making escape drugs right under Maxwell's nose? When you're the resident genius expected to create complex neuropharmaceuticals, it's relatively simple to divert trace components, Sarah replied with a hint of her old confidence. Deep breath, everyone, and hold it until we're past them. With practiced precision, she activated the vial and tossed it around the corner. A soft hissing sound was followed by a muffled thud as the guards collapsed. The Millers moved quickly past them, careful not to inhale until they reached the clear area Sarah indicated. The security hub is 2 levels down, Sarah directed, leading them toward a service elevator hidden behind an unmarked panel. Maintenance access only, not connected to the main security grid. As they descended, Emma studied her mother's face in the elevator's dim light. Despite the confidence and competence Sarah was displaying, Emma could see the cost of 14 years of captivity in the fine tremors of her hands, the hyper-vigilance in her scanning gaze. "Mom," she said softly, "are you okay?" Sarah's composure slipped momentarily, raw emotion flashing across her features before she regained control. "I will be, once we're all out. Once I know Kevin is safe." The elevator doors opened to a utilitarian corridor lined with maintenance equipment and electrical panels. Sarah led them with unwavering certainty through the labyrinthine back channels of the facility, navigating by memory alone. "Security response teams will be mobilizing throughout the facility," she explained as they moved. "But they'll be focused on the containment breaches I triggered in the opposite sectors. Our path should remain relatively clear if we—" She stopped abruptly as voices became audible ahead. A security team was approaching from the connecting corridor. "In here," Sarah whispered urgently, opening a supply closet. They crowded inside, Michael's wheelchair barely fitting through the door. In the close darkness, Sarah's breathing quickened, a hint of panic breaking through her controlled exterior. Michael reached for her hand, finding it cold and trembling. "Sarah," he said softly, just her name, but laden with 14 years of longing, of faith, of undiminished love. Her fingers tightened around his as the security team passed their hiding place, voices fading as they moved toward the presumed breach zones. When silence returned, Sarah exhaled shakily. "Sorry," she whispered. "Small spaces. After being confined for so long?" "You don't need to explain," Michael assured her. "You've been extraordinarily brave for 14 years. A moment of fear now doesn't diminish that." They emerged cautiously, continuing their progress toward the security hub where Kevin and Agent Zhao should be waiting. As they approached the final corridor, a familiar figure appeared at the junction ahead. "Kevin?" Sarah breathed, seeing her youngest son in person for the first time in 14 years. Kevin stared back, momentarily frozen at the sight of his mother, the woman who had existed primarily in photographs and fragmented childhood memories throughout his conscious life. Unlike his siblings, who had years of concrete memories to sustain them, Kevin had been forced to construct an idea of his mother from stories and images. Now the reality stood before him. Older, silver-haired, tension evident in every line of her body, but unmistakably the same eyes that smiled from the family photographs he had memorized. "Mom," he managed, voice cracking slightly. Sarah moved toward him with a hesitancy absent in her reunions with Emma and Jason. This child, now a grown man, had been only 4 when she was taken. Did he remember her at all? Would he resent the absence that had shaped his entire life? The uncertainty evaporated as Kevin closed the distance between them, wrapping his arms around her in a fierce embrace that answered every unspoken question. Whatever memories he had or hadn't retained, the emotional connection remained intact. Mother and son recognizing each other on a level that transcended conscious recollection. "I knew we'd find you," Kevin said, his voice muffled against her shoulder. "Dad never gave up. None of us did." Sarah held him tightly, one hand cradling the back of his head as she had when he was small. "You've grown so much," she whispered. "I've missed so much." Agent Zhao approached from the security hub, her professional demeanor notably softened at witnessing the reunion. "Dr. Miller, it's an honor to meet you finally. But we need to move immediately. I've disabled the main security protocols, but backup systems will engage in approximately 3 minutes." Sarah reluctantly released Kevin, composure returning as she focused on the escape plan. "Northeast maintenance exit. It leads to a service road with minimal surveillance. From there we can reach the perimeter fence at its weakest point." "Already mapped," Agent Zhao confirmed. "Vehicle is in position for extraction once we clear the compound." As they moved with renewed urgency toward the exit, Michael studied the security schematics displayed on Kevin's tablet. "What about the other scientists?" Sarah mentioned someone named Lynn. "I've triggered emergency evacuation protocols in the residential wing," Kevin explained, "and transmitted location data to the DEA tactical team that's mobilizing. They'll secure the facility and free everyone within the hour." Sarah looked at her youngest son with undisguised pride. "You did that for them? For people you don't even know?" "You cared enough to mention them," Kevin replied simply. "That made them important." They reached the maintenance exit without further incident, a testament to the effectiveness of Sarah's diversionary tactics and Kevin's security system sabotage. Beyond the door lay a narrow service road leading away from the main compound, bordered by dense vegetation that offered concealment. "Wait," Sarah said as Agent Zhao prepared to open the final door. "Once we step outside, we're committed. Maxwell has contingency protocols for facility breaches. Secondary security teams deployed from external locations. The DEA has aerial surveillance in place, Agent Zhao assured her. Any approaching reinforcements will be intercepted. You don't understand, Sarah insisted, tension evident in her voice. Maxwell's organization extends beyond official channels. He has private contractors, mercenary teams stationed nearby specifically for containment scenarios. Michael wheeled closer to her. Sarah, we can't stay here. Whatever's waiting outside, we face it together. She looked at him, conflict visible in her expression. I've been working toward this moment for 14 years, but now that it's here, she swallowed hard. I'm terrified of failing at the final step. Of getting you all captured or killed because of me. Not because of you, Emma corrected firmly. Because of Maxwell and what he's done. And we're not failing. Not when we've come this far. Sarah took a deep breath, visibly centering herself. You're right. We move forward. Together. Agent Zhao opened the door, and they emerged into the humid air of the Hong Kong countryside. The service road stretched before them, curving around the facility's perimeter toward a section of fencing partially obscured by overgrown vegetation. The weakness in the security perimeter Sarah had identified during her years of observation. They moved as swiftly as possible given Michael's wheelchair, which performed admirably on the rough terrain. Jason took over pushing duties from Emma, his strength allowing for greater speed. 200 meters to the extraction point, Agent Zhao reported, checking her tactical device. Perimeter breach detected in the main system. Facility-wide alarm activation imminent. As if summoned by her warning, sirens began to wail throughout the compound, red emergency lights casting an ominous glow across the landscape. In the distance, shouts and the sound of running feet indicated security teams mobilizing. They've discovered Maxwell, Sarah concluded grimly. Full response protocols now. Almost there, Kevin encouraged, supporting his mother, whose energy was visibly flagging after the sustained adrenaline rush of their escape. They reached the section of fence Sarah had identified, where erosion had created a depression beneath the barrier, and the electronic monitoring system showed a consistent blind spot. Kevin and Agent Zhao quickly deployed equipment to expand the gap, while Jason prepared to help Michael navigate the obstacle. Security teams approaching from the west, Emma warned, keeping watch. 60 seconds, Agent Zhao responded calmly, working with practiced efficiency. Sarah stood beside Michael's wheelchair, a strange calm settling over her despite the chaos erupting around them. After 14 years of captivity, of calculated submission and careful resistance, the moment of true freedom was tantalizingly close. Michael reached for her hand and she grasped it like a lifeline. We're going to make it, he assured her. All of us. Michael, she said suddenly, urgently, whatever happens in the next few minutes, I need you to know I never stopped fighting to get back to you. Every day, every moment, you and the children were with me. Before he could respond, Agent Zhao announced, breach secured. Move through now. Kevin went first, creating a path and ensuring the way was clear. Emma followed, then turned to help Jason maneuver Michael's wheelchair through the modified opening in the fence. The process was awkward but efficient, with Sarah providing guidance based on her intimate knowledge of the security systems. Mom, your turn, Jason called once Michael was safely through. Sarah moved toward the fence opening, freedom just steps away, when a shout from behind froze her in place. Dust, Ducker. Chen, stop immediately. A security team had spotted them, rapidly closing the distance. At their head was Lin, Sarah's colleague and sometimes ally, being marched forward at gunpoint by one of Maxwell's most trusted lieutenants. Dr. Chen, return to the facility now, or Doctor. Lin dies, the man called, pressing his weapon against Lin's temple to emphasize the point. Sarah halted, looking back at the woman who had helped her survive 14 years of captivity, who had assisted in her escape attempt despite the tremendous risk. Sarah, no, Michael called from beyond the fence. It's a delaying tactic. They'll kill her anyway once they have you. He's right, Lin called, her voice trembling but determined. Go, Sarah. Get to your family. The security team continued advancing, weapons raised. From beyond the fence, Agent Zhao drew her sidearm, positioning herself to protect the Miller family while assessing whether she could get a clear shot at Lin's captor. Mom, please, Emma pleaded. We can't lose you again. Sarah stood at the threshold of freedom, torn between her loyal colleague and the family she had sacrificed 14 years to protect. The moment stretched, agonizing in its weight of consequence. Then Sarah's scientific mind, the same brilliant intellect that had survived 14 years of captivity through calculated risks and precise planning, made one final desperate calculation. She reached into her lab coat, withdrawing her last vial of neurosedative. With the practiced precision of someone who had spent decades in laboratories, she activated the vial and hurled it toward Lynn and her captors, simultaneously diving toward the fence opening. The vial shattered at the security team's feet, releasing its contents in a rapidly expanding cloud. Lynn, prepared by her years working alongside Sarah, held her breath and closed her eyes. Her captor, caught by surprise, inhaled reflexively. His grip loosened as the fast-acting compound took effect, allowing Lynn to break free and run toward the fence. "Cover me," Sarah called to Agent Zhao as she turned back, extending her hand toward Lynn. Agent Zhao provided precisely targeted suppressive fire, forcing the remaining security personnel to take cover rather than pursue. The precious seconds this created allowed Lynn to reach Sarah, who pulled her toward the fence opening. "Both of you now," Michael urged from the other side, Jason and Kevin already moving to help them through. Sarah pushed Lynn through first, ensuring her colleague's safety before following. As she crawled through the opening, a shot rang out, a security officer who had circled to a different angle. Sarah gasped, stumbling as she cleared the fence. Emma was at her side instantly, medical training taking over as she checked for injury. "I'm okay," Sarah insisted, though her voice was strained. "Just grazed my side." "Keep moving." Agent Zhao fired several more covering shots, then gestured urgently toward the waiting van, partially concealed by vegetation 50 meters away. "Go! Now!" They moved as a group toward the extraction vehicle, Sarah and Lynn supported by Emma and Kevin, Michael's wheelchair pushed by Jason at maximum speed. Behind them, facility security had reached the fence breach but were momentarily stymied by Agent Zhao's tactical positioning and the lingering effects of Sarah's neurosedative. They reached the van, Jason helping Michael inside while Kevin assisted with the wheelchair. Emma guided Sarah and Lynn into the vehicle, already assessing Sarah's injury with professional efficiency. "Superficial," she confirmed with visible relief. "The bullet grazed your side but didn't penetrate deeply. I'll need to clean and bandage it properly when we're secure." Agent Zhao was the last to enter, sliding into the driver's seat and accelerating away from the facility with controlled urgency. Through the rear windows, they could see security personnel finally breaching the fence, but too late to prevent their escape. "DEA tactical team is 20 minutes out," Agent Zhao reported as she navigated the rough terrain. Hong Kong authorities have been briefed and are moving to secure all Eastern Horizon holdings in the territory. Interpol has arrest warrants prepared for Maxwell and his key associates. Sarah leaned against Michael in the van's middle row, his arm around her shoulders as she processed the reality of freedom after 14 years of captivity. The adrenaline that had sustained her was ebbing, leaving her trembling with a combination of exhaustion, pain from her injury, and overwhelming emotion. "We did it," she whispered, looking around at her children, adults now, transformed by the years she had missed, yet still recognizably hers. "We're all together." Michael's arm tightened around her, his voice thick with emotion as he pressed his lips to her temple. "Welcome back, Sarah." As the van sped toward Hong Kong and the safety of official protection, Sarah Miller closed her eyes briefly, allowing herself to truly believe for the first time that her 14-year nightmare was ending. The road ahead would be challenging. Physical recovery, psychological adjustment, legal proceedings against Maxwell and Eastern Horizon. But the fundamental truth sustaining her through 14 years of captivity had been proven correct. Family endured. Love persisted. And finally, against tremendous odds, the Millers were whole again. 6 months later, the Boston brownstone filled with morning sunlight as Sarah Miller carefully measured coffee grounds into the filter. The familiar ritual, once taken for granted, then longed for during 14 years of captivity, now represented the everyday freedom she was still learning to re-embrace. "Need help with that?" Michael asked, wheeling into the kitchen. Sarah turned to him with a smile that erased years from her face. "I'm still enjoying doing ordinary things. Even making coffee feels like a luxury," Michael understood. Since their return from Hong Kong, Sarah had approached even the most mundane activities with a quiet appreciation that humbled him. Making meals in their kitchen, walking freely in the neighborhood, sleeping in their bed without fear or surveillance. Small freedoms that constituted a miraculous whole. The aftermath of their escape from Eastern Horizon had been intense. International authorities had moved swiftly, using Sarah's meticulous evidence to dismantle Maxwell's operation across 3 continents. The man himself now awaited trial on multiple charges, including kidnapping, forced imprisonment, human trafficking, and drug manufacturing. Lynn had been granted asylum in the United States, her testimony further strengthening the case against Eastern Horizon. The other scientists held at the facility had been freed, many reuniting with families who, like the Millers, had spent years wondering about their fate. Sarah placed a coffee mug on the table beside Michael's chair, then leaned down to kiss him gently. 6 months home, and I still wake up every morning checking to make sure you're really here. I know the feeling, he replied, catching her hand. 14 years of reaching across to an empty side of the bed. She settled into the chair opposite him, both of them savoring the quiet moment before their house would fill with family. Today was special, their first full family gathering since Sarah's return. Emma was flying in from Chicago, Jason and his family coming from their home across town, and Kevin driving up from his new job in New York. Are you nervous? Michael asked, recognizing the slight tension in Sarah's posture despite her smile. A little, she admitted. Silly, I know. They're my children. But so much time has passed. Emma and Jason have established their careers, their own families. Kevin barely remembers me from before. They've moved mountains to find you, Michael reminded her gently. The connection is there, Sarah. Different from before, perhaps, but unbroken. She nodded, sipping her coffee thoughtfully. You know what I realized recently? I missed Kevin's entire childhood, Emma and Jason's adolescence. But I get to be present for my granddaughter's life from almost the beginning. There's something healing in that continuity. The doorbell rang, interrupting their conversation. Sarah rose, smoothing her hands nervously over her pants before going to answer. Grandma! A delighted shriek preceded the whirlwind that was 4-year-old Sarah, named for the grandmother she had only met 6 months ago, but had embraced without reservation. The child launched herself into Sarah's arms. Hello, my sweet girl, Sarah said, lifting her granddaughter with a joy that momentarily erased the shadow of 14 lost years. Behind little Sarah stood Jason and his wife Rebecca, arms laden with bags and gifts. Mom, Jason greeted, his formal facade softening as it always did in his mother's presence. The remaining trace of disbelief that she was truly home, truly safe, was fading with each reunion, replaced by comfortable familiarity. Rebecca stepped forward to embrace Sarah warmly. Though they had only known each other for 6 months, a natural affection had developed between them, facilitated by little Sarah's instant adoration of her grandmother. Emma texted that her flight landed, Rebecca reported. She should be here within the hour. And Kevin called from the highway about 30 minutes out. The house gradually filled with family, Emma arriving with her fiancé David, whom she had introduced to her mother via video call, but who was meeting Sarah in person for the first time. Kevin bringing his new boyfriend Marcus, another first meeting that reflected how life had continued evolving during Sarah's absence. Sarah moved through these introductions with a grace that belied her earlier nervousness, the scientist's observant nature helping her connect details from conversations and video calls to the people now gathered in her home. If moments of overwhelm occasionally surfaced, too many voices, too much movement after years of isolation and control, Michael was always nearby, his quiet presence grounding her. As Rebecca and Emma organized lunch in the kitchen, Sarah slipped away to the study for a brief moment of quiet. The room remained largely as she remembered, Michael having preserved her books, her papers, her presence throughout the 14 years of absence. She crossed to the desk where a new addition sat, a sleek microscope and compact research setup that Michael had installed upon her return. Beside it rested her journals, both the ones from before her abduction and new ones filled with careful notes made since her return. There you are, Kevin said from the doorway. Everything okay? Sarah smiled at her youngest son. Of all the relationships affected by her 14-year absence, theirs held the most uncertainty. Kevin had been too young when she disappeared to have formed solid memories, growing up with a mother who existed primarily in stories and photographs. Just taking a moment, she explained. Still getting used to having so many people around after years of isolation. Kevin entered the study, looking curiously at the research equipment. Dad mentioned you've been working on something. The original chrysalis formula? Sarah nodded, grateful for his interest. Science had always been her language, her way of making sense of the world. The real version, the one meant to heal neural pathways, not create dependency. I'm refining it based on everything I learned during captivity. For Dad? Kevin asked perceptively. Partly, she acknowledged. The formula might help regenerate some function in his damaged nerves. But beyond that, she touched the journals reverently. Maxwell forced me to pervert my research for profit, reclaiming it, redirecting it toward its original healing purpose. It's part of my own recovery. Kevin moved closer, studying the molecular diagrams visible in the open journal. Dad says you're collaborating with researchers at MIT. That clinical trials might start next year. If everything proceeds as hoped, Sarah hesitated, then added quietly, 14 years developing a destructive drug. I need to balance that with something healing. Kevin's expression grew serious. Mom, you don't need to atone for what they forced you to do. Don't I? Sarah looked up at her son, this thoughtful young man who had grown up without her. Blue chrysalis has hurt countless people. That it exists at all is because of my knowledge, my skills. Under coercion, Kevin emphasized. No one holds you responsible. The authorities, the public, they see you as a victim, not a perpetrator. Perhaps. But I need to hold myself accountable in some way, Sarah explained. Not from guilt, but from responsibility. My mind created something that caused harm. Now it needs to create something that heals. Kevin studied her with the same analytical intensity she remembered from Michael. The scientist's mindset genetically transmitted to their youngest child despite her absence from his formative years. I understand, he said finally. But don't forget to heal yourself too. Sarah reached up to touch his face gently. When did you get so wise? Had good parents, he replied with a small smile. One in person, one in spirit. The phrase struck her deeply. This acknowledgement that she had remained a presence in her children's lives despite her physical absence. That Michael had kept her memory alive and meaningful. Come on, Kevin said, offering his hand. Emma's telling everyone about her wedding plans, and Jason's trying not to look terrified about being appointed best man. Sarah allowed her son to lead her back to the family gathering, where the conversation flowed around her in comforting waves. Emma describing her medical career and upcoming wedding. Jason debating legal points with Michael. Rebecca sharing stories of little Sarah's preschool adventures. Marcus and David, the newest additions to their circle, fitting in with remarkable ease. As lunch progressed into afternoon, Sarah found herself watching Michael across the table. He caught her gaze and smiled, the same smile that had sustained her through 14 years of memories, the smile she had fought to return to. Later, as evening approached and their guests prepared to depart, Sarah retreated briefly to the back porch. The autumn air carried a slight chill, but after years in climate-controlled captivity, she welcomed the sensory experience of changing seasons. Michael joined her, the familiar hum of his wheelchair, a sound she had once feared she might never hear again. Successful day, he observed, positioning himself beside her at the railing. Better than I expected, Sarah agreed. They've all grown into such remarkable people, Michael. You did an amazing job with them. We did, he corrected gently. You were always present in how I raised them. In the stories I told, the values I emphasized, the scientific curiosity I encouraged. Sarah's hand found his shoulder, squeezing gently in acknowledgement of this gift he had given her, keeping her role as mother alive even in her absence. The chrysalis formula, she said after a comfortable silence. The initial lab results are promising. There's real potential for helping spinal cord injuries like yours. Michael looked up at her, understanding the unspoken question. Is that why you think I supported your return to research? Hope for my own recovery? It crossed my mind, she admitted. Your condition resulted from protecting me, Michael. That night before my abduction, if you hadn't fallen trying to catch me when I stumbled on the stairs... Don't, he interrupted firmly. We've been through this. My accident and your abduction were separate tragedies that happened to occur in sequence. Neither caused the other. Still, Sarah persisted, if the chrysalis formula could restore even partial function... Sarah. Michael took her hand, his grip warm and steady. If your research helps others with spinal injuries, including possibly me someday, that's wonderful. But it's not why I support your work. I support it because science has always been part of who you are. Because reclaiming your research from what Maxwell forced you to create is important to your healing. Sarah felt the familiar sting of tears, still surprisingly close to the surface after 6 months of freedom. The understanding between them remained profound despite 14 years of separation. I've been thinking about what comes next, she said, changing direction slightly. Beyond the research, beyond the criminal proceedings against Maxwell. And, Michael prompted gently, I want to find the others, Sarah explained. Not just the scientists from the Hong Kong facility, but anyone whose life was damaged by blue chrysalis. The formula I was forced to create hurt people, Michael. Families were destroyed by addiction. I can't undo that harm, but perhaps I can help some recover. Michael nodded, understanding immediately. A foundation, perhaps. using the settlement money from Eastern Horizon's assets to fund recovery programs, research into addiction treatments. Exactly. Sarah smiled, reminded again of how their minds still worked in tandem. Reclamation in all its forms. My freedom. My research. And whatever healing I can offer to others affected by Maxwell's operation. From inside the house came the sound of laughter. Emma and Kevin engaged in some sibling debate, little Sarah's delighted giggles punctuating their banter. The ordinary, precious sound of family. Sarah closed her eyes briefly, absorbing the moment. 14 years I held on to this, the image of all of us together again. It kept me going when compliance seemed easier than resistance. Michael reached up, drawing her down for a gentle kiss. Welcome home, Sarah. For good this time. As darkness fell around their home, the Miller family remained illuminated from within, incomplete for 14 years, now whole again. Different than before, marked by their separation, but stronger for having found their way back to each other against impossible odds. Sarah Miller had lost 14 years with her family, but standing on her porch, her husband beside her, their children's voices filling their home, she knew with absolute certainty that the years ahead belonged entirely to them. Not to fear, not to separation, not to the shadow of what had been taken. The future, with all its ordinary moments and extraordinary possibilities, was finally rightfully theirs again.